Welcome to the entire plot of Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. This is a compilation of my mini-series, The Entire Plot of Throne of Glass, so I am stitching together all the episodes that I have done on Assassin's Blade. If you would rather watch this video in smaller chunks, I'll definitely link all of the individual episodes below for you to watch. I'll also give you the disclaimer that I did cover Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire before Assassin's Blade, and I do continually refer back to those three books throughout the video. So if you have not read the first three books in the series, then this video is not for you. Last warning before we kick things off, I was a little confused when I was working through this series, and so I changed locations about 3 times. I probably changed my style multiple times as well, and on top of that, the sound quality did get really corrupted in one video. I did my best to fix it, but forgive me if the sound quality on one of the parts is not super stellar. And now that we got all that out of the way, you can officially enjoy the entire plot of Assassin's Blade. I was really struggling to think of how to break up these books, and I just decided, since there are 5 mini books inside of this book, each book is going to get its own video with the exception of the first 2, which is what we're going to be going over today. Today we're going to be reading The Assassin and the Pirate Lord as well as The Assassin and the Healer, but they are the first mini stories in the Assassin's Blade book. Chapter 1 of The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. That's hard to say. So chapter 1, we are in the Assassin's Keep with Celaena in her true assassin form at the age of 16. So this takes place about 2 years before Throne of Glass Book 1. So Arobynn Hamel, the king of the Assassin's Keep, has assembled all of his best and brightest assassins together. Turns out Grigori was on a mission and it went wrong and he was caught. Selena immediately calls that they should have another assassin go in and have him killed, just so that he can't spill any information about the Assassin's Keep. But Sam speaks up in opposition to this plan. We're gonna get a little bit more into Sam's life story later. I know it's briefly mentioned here, but it just makes more sense to delve into it later. So apparently, Ben, who was another assassin, was involved in Grigori's mission for whatever reason, but he actually got killed in the crossfire on this mission. They tried, but for whatever reason, the assassins who went to go retrieve Ben's body failed. Which ticked Celaena off because she was not asked to do it, and she was very close to Ben, we find. Sam tries to pick a fight with Celaena because she's basically saying that,
"I'm better than you, I could have done this, and the fact that you didn't just says a lot about your abilities as an assassin."
So it's a little petty, if you will. When Sam puts his hand on his pommel to pull a sword out on Celaena, Arobynn Hamel basically says,
"Go to your room and think about what you did."
Arobynn definitely has some favoritism towards Celaena. And as Sam is walking out, Celaena informs them all that she's going to show them how it's done, and she leaves and she goes to retrieve Ben's body. Chapter 2. It is 2 months, 3 days, and 8 months later, and Sam and Celaena are waiting to meet Captain Pirate Lord Rolfe in his office in Skulls Bay. And we find out they're going to be here on this mission for 3 days. Now, before we go into what the mission is exactly, let's take a minute and talk about Celaena's mask, because it does come up a good bit in this short story. So Celaena's mask is a full coverage face mask that completely hides her identity, but it also distorts her voice, which I think is pretty cool. This is to keep Celaena's identity a secret because the Assassin's Keep is actually smack in the middle of Aderlyn, so she is able to walk around just like any other citizen, but that's because her identity is a secret. This is where I will emphasize she is the most notorious assassin, and I know some people like to joke that if you're notorious and a widely known assassin, that means you're a sucky assassin. It's more like her name is notorious, but people actually don't know what she looks like. You could know everything there is possibly to know about Celaena Sardothian and then be talking directly to her and have no clue, because that is how well hidden her identity is. Even the other assassins, like Sam, have made an oath to Arobynn that they will never reveal Celaena's identity. So this is a pretty big deal. Pretty much everyone just knows her name and that she's female, but nobody knows her hair, her face, or even her age, which is the funniest part. She is literally a 16-year-old girl. We actually find out in Throne of Glass that the King of Aderlyn, when she was caught, he actually claims that she was way older than she was to make himself look less bad, that he was beefing with a 16-year-old girl for years. Anyways, I just think that's a little funny. Okay, so as for the mission, 3 assassins of the Assassin's Keep were killed by the hands of Ralph's pirate men. So they've been sent by Arobynn to receive penance for these 3 deaths in the form of gold. So in this situation, Celaena is the weapon and Sam is the one who has his head on straight, because although she's definitely more skilled in combat, she can be pretty emotional about combat, and she does really like to jump into action. She loves to instigate problems and really just to pick fights. So Sam is there to make sure that she does what she needs to do, but she also stays on mission. Celaena's a little offended because they've been sitting in Captain Rolfe's office for a little while and he's still not there. Celaena decides to take this as permission to not only sit in his desk chair, but just start going through his desk and reading his personal letters. Rolfe eventually comes in, and of course he's very ticked off that Celaena is just kind of like rummaging through his things and reading his stuff, but she remains seated there while Sam introduces himself and he introduces Celaena. During this whole like introduction interaction, Celaena's eyes immediately go to Rolfe's hand. He has a very infamous magic tattoo on his hand. It's basically a living tattoo that is a map of the ocean, and not only just the ocean, but it charts any natural disasters as they're coming in and out. It shows him where his enemies are, and it shows him where treasure is. So if you ask me, that's pretty cool. And Celaena is obviously very fascinated by this tattoo and has a lot of questions, but she decides to keep them to herself for now. But they need to make negotiations with this man, so Celaena decides to finally get out of his chair, so they can start negotiating. Celaena and Sam say that Arobynn, in the place of the 3 deaths of the 3 assassins by Rolfe's men, they want penance in the form of gold, whereas Rolfe claims these were not his men as the attack happened at 3 a.m., so no one could have possibly seen the tattoos of the pirates that would have identified them as his men. All of his men have tattoos on their wrists, and he was basically saying that, sure, it may have been pirates, but you can't prove that they were my pirates. Anyway, so Celaena hands over 2 sealed documents from Arobynn to Rolfe, and he opens them and reads them, and he basically laughs at them, and he was like,
"Your master's payment request is quite reasonable."
And then he says something about a trade agreement. So clearly Celaena and Sam are not here to gather gold for penance for the murder of 3 assassins. They're here for a trade agreement, which seems a little odd. And then Rolfe says, "I'll have my accountant draw up the necessary fees, but you'll have to tell Arobynn that he can't expect any profits till at least the 2nd shipment, possibly the 3rd. And if he has an issue with that, then he can come down here himself to tell me." Celaena has a red flag pop up in this moment, but Sam seems to be totally aware of this agreement, like he doesn't seem fazed at all. So I guess it's a good thing that Celaena's wearing a mask so that no one can see her reactions. But Sam asks when the 1st shipment will be ready, and Rolfe says that the slaves will be here in 2 days, ready for your departure the day after. Celaena may murder people for a living, but she draws a line at slave labor. And she plays the part as none of this shocks her, but she is absolutely disgusted. She's extremely shocked. She's just totally thrown by this trade agreement. So her mind is spiraling about like, how in the world did we get to this point? And then Rolfe reveals that he's been dealing in slave trading for 2 years now. So this all happens, and then Celaena's like, okay, Sam and I will be going to our rooms now because they're staying there for 3 days. And unfortunately, this is not a 1-bed trope. It is a one room, but 2 beds. Chapter 3. 5 minutes into being into their room, Celaena and Sam have already swept the place to make sure there's no like peepholes or anything where someone could see Celaena's identity. And then Celaena goes to blow Sam's head off, but he does cut her off, and he basically just says, "I have no clue about the slave deal. I was just pretending like I knew. I had no clue. What in the world are we going to do?" Something really funny here is that obviously Celaena's biggest concern is the slaves, but she starts to spiral about the fact that Arobynn lied to her. Now remember, in the book Heir of Fire, Celaena talks about how Arobynn is like shackles to her because not only did he ruin her life and make her the assassin that she is, but Arobynn did save her life. Arobynn is the only reason she's alive. So it was either like, would being an assassin be better than being dead kind of idea. Also, she was his favorite for the longest time, so she really reaped all the possible benefits of being an assassin to corrupt men at the time of war. So like, although she had a moral compass, she was able to kind of like ignore some of the moral issues of like her job, I guess. It's very complex morally, and I think that's what I do love about the Sarah J Maas books, is that the main character, she has a fatal flaw, and it is the fact that she is an assassin, but she has a moral compass. This is the first time, because remember, we're going back in time. This is the first time that Arobynn has ever given her a reason to doubt. Also, something that's not sitting right with her is, why would Arobynn even need to get involved in the slave trade? Because Arobynn is filthy rich. So later that night, they go to dinner, and Celaena can't even eat anything because the mask is covering her mouth. And Rolfe kind of did this on purpose. He really, really wants to see her face, and he is goading her like the entire dinner. And frankly, throughout this entire short story, he desperately wants her to take off the mask because he just needs to know. He's curious. Like, this is one of the most notorious assassins. He's spending 3 days with her. He really wants to know who she is. Rolfe's like, okay, well, if you won't let me see your face, at least tell me your story. And she says, I trained. And then she basically says, some of us don't need a magic tattoo. Some of us had to climb to the top. And obviously this hits at Rolfe's ego, but he corrects her. He says, no, I just killed everyone who was better than me. This man. He also says that he actually isn't depending on his tattoo to become the Pirate Lord of Skulls Bay because it hasn't worked for 8 years since magic disappeared. And of course we know because of both Crown of Midnight and Heir of Fire that is due to the king's anti-magic beacons. And that's enough about that dinner because it's really just Rolfe and Celaena like bickering the entire time. They get back to their rooms and Sam and Celaena then bicker. And Sam thinks that Celaena's too cocky and Celaena thinks that Sam is too complacent. They don't like each other, guys. I cannot stress this enough. They can't stand each other. Chapter 4, Celaena cannot sleep that night because she's thinking about the slaves. And she decides in this moment that she refuses to transport them and play any part in this slave trade. So she has 2 days to find a way to uproot both Arobynn and Rolfe's plan, and then on top of that, she needs to survive the attempt. She knows that Sam won't help her, so she has to be really sneaky about this. So Celaena's walking around Skulls Bay with Rolfe and basically like scouting out the island, but she's noticing how gnarly it is. Then as she's walking around, she notices 2 things that make Skulls Bay what Skulls Bay is, which is really, really good at trade. The first thing is called Shipbreaker, which is actually this really crazy giant chain that is extremely large, and it can literally snap a ship in half if it tries to pass over this chain, which is how Rolfe controls who comes in and out of his port. There's a watchtower where there's this giant lever that kind of controls to like bring the chain down below the water so that a ship can pass over it, and that raises it back up if they don't want anyone coming in or out. The second thing is that there are 2 catapults also right next to this watchtower that if anyone for whatever reason somehow got past this shipbreaker, then the catapults would take the ships out. Celaena then decides in this moment that she's gonna kind of pull the whole like Arobynn's faithful servant, so she turns to Rolfe and she says she wants to examine the quality of the goods, basically playing the role that she is totally in on this slave trade agreement. He says that all the slaves are being inspected and are being held in a facility so that she can join when he goes to check how the inspection's going. So the slaves that she's gonna go see that are being inspected right now are not actually her shipment. It's like a shipment that he's sending out for trade for something else entirely, and then Arobynn's shipment of slaves is going to be the next group that comes. So they're going to be inspecting a different group of slaves. So her plan is that she's going to go check out these slaves and basically claim that they're not up to par, and then it's going to be easy and done. She'll just deal with Arobynn being mad at her for it later. She goes back to the room before this inspection, and Sam's actually there, and he is ticked off that Celaena was talking to Rolfe when he wasn't present. And then the funniest part is that she tells him to like get over himself, like maybe I think the pirate's hot. Girl, be so for real. Sam sees right through her and says, "You think I can't tell when you're cooking up some scheme?" He knows her too well. They practically grew up together, so I'm not surprised. Chapter 5, it's later that night and they are ready to go to the holding facility to inspect the slaves with Captain Rolfe. Yes, Sam is joining Celaena this time because he can tell that something's not quite right with her. So they go inside and Celaena is immediately faced with a crazy ton of cells full of 100 Yrene men, women, and even children, and they're just in the most horrible conditions. So they approach an Yrene man who's kind of at the end of all of these cells. He's around 20 and he's in chains. Rolfe mentions that this guy, because he's strong and more handsome, he will most likely be used for hard labor, or he's technically handsome enough he might be forced into the life of a courtesan. And I'll just tell you guys right now, this is honestly such a gut-wrenching and disgusting chapter, but that's why it makes the end of this short story so much better. So just bear with me here. Rolfe then continues to talk about how 10 of the 100 in Arobynn's shipment is going to be including children, which are mostly just good for selling to brothels. Now, this is where I'm going to give you a little bit more of Sam's backstory, because Sam is actually visually upset by this. Thankfully, I don't think Rolfe notices, but Celaena definitely does. So Sam's mother was a slave, and she was sold to a brothel and forced to become a courtesan. That's also when she had Sam by accident. While Sam was still pretty young, his mother was actually murdered by a very jealous client, but shortly before her death, because his mother knew Arobynn, she made a deal with him. She basically said, "I'd rather my son grow up to be an assassin than a courtesan, so please take him." And Arobynn did. So that's why Sam is an assassin and not a courtesan. But basically, you'll see that that's a theme in these books, is a lot of people who ended up in the Assassin's Keep, they had a choice between either death and being an assassin, or death and being a courtesan, or death and being an assassin or a courtesan. Very, very sad stuff. Anyways, so Celaena's just asking questions, and she's positioning it in a way that it just seems that Arobynn sent her because she's really, like, tough on the details. So Rolfe's actually being pretty open with answering everything. Like, it doesn't even occur to him that she's trying to think of a way to, you know, sabotage this trade agreement. So he's actually telling her a lot of things, thinking that the trade's only going to happen if Celaena's happy with it. So he is giving her basically all the information she's asking for. And it's kind of a risky question, but she does ask when this current shipment's going out, because it's not theirs. Without even thinking about it, just kind of shares like, "Oh, they're going to be going out the same time as yours, not that it matters." And she's like, "Yeah, you're so right, not that it matters." So the inspection is done. Celaena decides to just march off to the beach. Sam is following quickly behind her. And once they get far enough from the facility, Celaena does like take her mask off and all that just to like get a breath of fresh air, and no one's around. So like, don't worry, that's not going to be the plot twist here. That is the least of our worries right now. And Celaena has a lot of pent-up frustration and anger, obviously, from everything that she's seen. So she just turns around and she starts brawling with Sam, but she's fighting really emotionally. So Sam's actually able to pin her down and basically begs her to just talk to him. Like, she's obviously not okay. Celaena then shares that she can't allow it to happen and she's going to stop it. Not just the shipment like she originally planned, but she is going to free all of the slaves. Sam is shocked that she wants to do this, but also at the same time, he doesn't seem to disagree. And he basically just says, "You do realize both Arobynn and Rolfe are gonna kill you if you do this." She says that she's gonna do it anyways, and Sam says, "Okay, I guess I'm doing it with you." He says, "If we're going to die, it should be for a noble cause." So Celaena and Sam, as much as they have hated each other their entire lives, they're going to team up together to free all 200 of these slaves. So Celaena tells Sam her entire plan, which we're actually not privy to as the readers. That's just like Sarah J Maas's writing style, which honestly I kind of prefer, because then when we get to see the plan in action, it's far more exciting if you don't know what's going to happen next. So that's just my opinion. Also, what happens after is really up for consideration. Sam suggests that they run away together, because obviously, like, the chances of them surviving post freeing the slaves is very low, considering how both Arobynn and Rolfe do their business. Celaena thinks it's an interesting suggestion, but she's also not saying no at the same time. But then what Sam says next is extremely interesting, and something that you definitely should keep close to your chest and remember. Sam wonders if this is all bigger than just the slave trade. Sam thinks that Arobynn wanted the two of them out of Adarlan because this mission is well below their skill set, and although Celaena's definitely number one, Sam's probably number two when it comes to skills at the Assassin's Keep. And if that doesn't get your gears turning, he also says that he doesn't think that Ben's death was an accident or that the mission actually failed. He thinks that it went wrong for other reasons. Very interesting. So the examination of their actual shipment, so they examined the other shipment just to see what the slave quality is, but their shipment actually gets in tomorrow morning. So Sam's going to sleep for the night, and Celaena decides that she's going to walk along the beach and just kind of process everything before the examination tomorrow. Guys, when I tell you, okay, this next part, let's talk about it. This is why you cannot read this book first. When I tell you, reading this paragraph just gave me absolute chills. And if you're reading this book first and you don't know Celaena, all of this falls flat. Like, it just seems like a random paragraph. Okay, let me just read it. This is like a shortened version of the paragraph. She walked until a surprisingly cold breeze swept past her, and she halted. Slowly, Celaena turned north towards the source of the breeze, which smelt of a faraway land she hadn't seen in 8 years. Pine and snow. A city still in winter's grasp. She breathed it in, stared across the leagues of lonely black ocean, seeing somehow that distant city that had once long ago been her home. Back then, she hadn't any choice. When Arobynn offered her this path, it was either that or death. But now, she took a shuddering breath. No, she was as limited in her choices as when she was 8 years old. She was Aderlin's assassin, and she always would be. Guys, do you realize what we just read? It was in this moment that Celaena was debating freeing the slaves and then pursuing being Aelin. Look, I don't know what Sarah J Maas puts in her coffee, but this kind of writing is insane. We literally get a peek at Celaena considering being Aelin again in the prequel, which is the 4th book, I believe, that Sarah J Maas wrote in this series, in an 8-book series. That is bonkers. I don't care what you say. Chapter 6, Celaena and Sam are walking through the island together the next morning, pretending like they're just exploring, when they're really scouting out the layout of their plan. And they actually do learn a lot. We're also not really privy as to what they learn, but they basically solidify their plan before they have to examine the shipment, which, by the way, that's what we're doing now. So we're gonna go examine the first shipment of Arobynn's slaves. There's actually only 93. Celaena asks where the other 7 are, but Rolfe says that they died on the journey there. And I mean, gross. I hate this man. Like, let's be honest. He is so gross. So Sam then asks where the slaves are from yesterday that they saw, and Rolfe dumbly points out the ship next to theirs. So, like, there's a lot of reasons why Rolfe answering their questions makes sense, but there have been 2 questions now, and I believe those are the only 2 ones. But there were 2 questions asked now that should have thrown off Rolfe. Like, he should have had a red flag in his head when those questions were asked, but that's just me. Then, in an almost comedic way, Celaena starts drilling Rolfe on all the security on the slaves. She wants to make sure that the shipment is secure and all of this stuff, and so he basically starts walking her through the security detail. Listen, I mean, good for them. Then, where we start to kind of see the plan come into place is Celaena then asks which of the slaves can speak the common tongue. Her claiming is that they want to see who's going to be the most high-value slaves because people are more likely to buy a slave that can speak their language. And only one of the slaves of the 97 speak up. So all of these people are about to be sold into slavery to serve people that speak a language they don't know. Sorry, I'm not crying. I'm not crying. I'm not crying. Dia, I believe is how you pronounce his name, but Dia reveals that he is a bilingual slave, and he will play a very big part in this escape plan. So remember our good buddy Dia. So it's hours later, Rolfe is no longer with them, and it is officially go time on this plan. Sam and Celaena hopped into little rowboats, and they're both gonna go to the opposite ships. So Sam is gonna go to the other shipment, while Celaena is gonna go to Arobynn's shipment. So they're the 2 ships that are right next to each other. And the reason why they're able to get away with this is they caused a commotion by spreading a rumor all throughout the island. The big tavern that everyone loves and goes to, well, all of the ale that night is gonna be on the pirate Lord Ralph's tab. So naturally, the entire island is at the tavern that night. And because of that, the security is at the absolute bare minimum. So the biggest concern that Celaena has as they're rowing to the boat is she's looking at this watchtower. They need to get in there and bring down Chainbreaker, but then also disable the catapult so that both of these ships can get free. And then on top of that, the seas around Skulls Bay are insanely difficult to navigate. So a lot needs to happen in order for this plan to go well, basically. Chapter 7, Celaena's gotten to her ship and Sam has gotten to his. They've given each other the signal and they have started just cranking through the ship, basically taking out every single guard in their way. She then makes it to the slaves' cargo chamber where they've all been chained to the floor with no light, no food, no water. It's literally just disgusting conditions. So she's looking for Dia, our bilingual slave, and she takes off his shackles and then asks him to translate for her. She gives him the key that she picked off one of the guards and says, I want you to unlock everyone's shackles and tell them that they're being set free. For now, they need to stay put until Sam and Celaena cause a commotion on the island. Then, as soon as a sliver of the sun is visible on the horizon, right at dawn, and this is important because obviously they need to navigate the worst parts of the ocean in the daylight, but then also they need to be able to catch the tide. At that point, they are going to make a run for it. She says, don't worry about Shipbreaker, don't worry about the catapults. Sam and I are going to take care of that. Just stay put. Stay quiet. Don't do anything that's going to draw attention to the ships until you see that sliver of daylight, and then you're all going to pop the oars out the bottom of the boat and you guys are going to absolutely gun it for the ocean. Dia then assures her that they will work out the specifics for themselves, but then thanked her for providing the keys and as well as a distraction. I almost forgot, then Celaena and Dia hop on that little rowboat and they go over to the other ship where Dia then gives the message to the other slaves as well because there was no one bilingual on that ship. Chapter 8, Sam and Celaena have joined Rolfe and his men at the tavern, and everyone is crazy drunk because of all of the rumors that everything is on Rolfe's tab. So there's this funny little thing that happens that you'll want to remember for future books, but Rolfe and Celaena make a deal. Rolfe will tell Celaena the story behind his tattoo the day that she reveals her face and her true identity. So remember that. That's a fun little tidbit for you. She then pulls out a type of game cards, and basically everyone in the tavern is just gambling the night away, having a good time, drinking a lot, and Sam and Celaena are like pretending to drink and be very drunk when obviously they're very, very sober because this plan needs to go well. Then the night gets wild, and I'm gonna quote this directly from the book because it's just too good. So Celaena trips a passing pirate who spilled his drink on an already belligerent man who in turn tried to punch him in the face but hit the man next to him instead. By luck at that moment, a trick card fell out of a man's sleeve and a prostitute slapped a pirate wench and the tavern exploded into a brawl. That's very descriptive. I can practically imagine it in my brain. So now everyone's fighting and it's pure chaos, and Celaena decides to join the brawl, and her whole thing is that she's just like slipping through the crowd, and obviously she's not gonna like unalive anyone because that's not why she's here. She's basically just like going through and just like punching people and then running away, just to kind of like add to the chaos and keep the chaos going. And then once her and Sam are pretty sure that things are wild enough, she books it. So now all they need to do is disarm Shipbreaker and they need to disarm the catapults. But they run into Captain Rolfe. Chapter 9. So apparently Rolfe saw Celaena trip the man at the tavern and cause the chaos, so that kind of clued him in that something was going on. Celaena sees a sliver of light in the distance. It is dawn. Also, Shipbreaker and the catapults are still barriers to the slaves escaping in the ships. But then at that moment, the ships start to move, and Celena's like praying that Rolfe doesn't see, but of course he does. However, in this moment, Celaena, in a bit of a panic, thinks, what's going to distract this man? How about the fact that he's been bested by a 16-year-old girl? So she whips off her mask. And sure enough, he hesitates for 1 second. It's just enough time for Sam to book it and get past Rolfe. But yeah, no, Rolfe is very, very mad about this new information. And then once he realizes that Sam's gotten past, he decides to start screaming to the guards for help. Now, mind you, everyone that he's screaming to get help from is extremely drunk, and they're all very beat up from brawling with each other. It's not really much of a challenge for Sam and Celaena to like outrun these people, but it still adds another barrier. And then Celaena and Rolfe start fighting, and he clearly has also been faking being drunk because he is tip-top shape in this fight. So the fight gets pretty ugly, and they both get a couple slashes in, but Celena's quicker than him and knocks him out by whacking him in the back of his head with the pommel of her sword. All the other pirates are now trying to stop Celaena and Sam, but like I said before, they are all way too drunk to actually be a true barrier. It's just more like an annoyance. So Sam has only a couple minutes left to get the chain down before the ships go right over it. So Celaena is running for her life to get to this watchtower, and she sees Sam in the distance. He makes it to the watchtower, but once he gets to the top, there's a bit of an issue. He's not pulling the lever because the lever was designed to need multiple men to pull on it in order for it to work. It was not designed for one man to pull it and chain breaker go down. So that's something they failed to consider. But Sam then has an idea. He jumps down from the watchtower and he goes over to the catapults. He rotates them so that they're pointing at the watchtower with the lever on it, and he uses the catapult to absolutely demolish the watchtower and the chains lever with it. But in doing so, the whole thing absolutely collapses onto Sam. That's a lot. We'll get there in a second. Thankfully, though, the chain falls just in time due to Sam's sacrifice, and the slaves are able to get away. Celaena obviously has a moment of relief where she is happy for the slaves for getting away, but then she realizes that Sam is probably dead, so she goes to run to see if she can try to find his body and see if it's not too late to save him, when she's stopped by Rolfe, who I guess is no longer knocked out. Chapter 10, Rolfe says he wants to kill her nice and slowly, because she just cost him 200 slaves, 2 nice ships, and then naturally, because Celaena is afraid of nothing, she goes, oh, and don't forget, everyone was drinking on your tab tonight in the tavern. I swear, she just is so unapologetically just petty. So then they brawl again, because why not? And there's just lots of brawling in this book, so I'll just set it straight for you right now. You're not gonna get a play-by-play from me. You're gonna get who wins and what important injuries occur. So Celaena beats Rolfe, and then gives him 2 papers that she wrote up herself in his handwriting, and he is to sign them and mark them with his seal. One is a letter to Arobynn that the deal is over, that there are no slaves, and that he will be punished if he ever hears word that Arobynn is participating in the slave trade. The second one is a letter supposedly written by Rolfe, vowing that he will never sell a slave again, and he will put it into pirate law that the slave trade is illegal, and that Skulls Bay will actually become a slave sanctuary to any slaves who escape the continent. Obviously, he refuses to sign, but she informs him that it doesn't matter, because remember in chapter 1 when she was rummaging through his desk, she wasn't just reading his letters, she was studying his handwriting, not only so she could write the letters and make it look like he wrote them, but also so that she could forge his signature. Also, when she was going through the desk, she snatched his signet ring that he seals everything with. And then she presents him with 2 options. His options are to sign it himself and be a better man, or he can die right here, right now, and she'll sign it for him. He chooses to live and be a better man against his will, and he signs those papers. But he tells her if she ever steps foot on Skulls Bay again, then she will be killed on the spot. She then gets his signatures, and then she decides to knock him out so that she can have a couple minutes to find Sam's body, take a ship, and get back to Aderlin as soon as possible. She's looking through the rubble and has basically all but accepted that Sam is dead and gone forever, but then she hears his voice. He's quite literally been watching her dig through the rubble for his body. She's mad at him, but then she hugs him, and it's this cute little moment, and Celaena is you know what, I hate you, but I think I hate you a little less than I thought I did. And now on to short story number 2, which is The Assassin and the Healer. Chapter 1, we're gonna flash forward a little bit of time. This is a little while after Celaena gets back from Skulls Bay. Celaena is staying at the White Pig Inn owned by Nolan. Yrene is a barmaid working at the White Pig. This chapter is gonna be from her POV as well as majority of this short story. So she's observing Celaena. Obviously she doesn't know it's Celaena, but we know it's Celaena. And she's very observant and can actually tell a lot of things about her that we know from reading the books. Yrene is a hard worker, but she's severely underpaid and mistreated by Nolan. She also has one other coworker who's also a barmaid named Jessa. Jessa sucks. That's all you really need to know. Also, we learn this, I think actually through Selena's eyes, but Yrene is a very, very pretty girl. A lot of the men apparently who come to drink at the White Pig are pigs themselves, so she gets harassed by men at the White Pig. This is also where we learn that Yrene's been working in this horrible condition for a year now, even though she only planned to stay for a month as a stop to her end destination, but she didn't make it very far. More on that later. Also, Jessa, the horrible coworker, she's extremely lazy, never helps Yrene with anything, and she takes 2/3 of her pay. How in the world that happens, I'm not really sure. I think Nolan just kind of lets her because a lot of the men do come there for her because she actually likes the disgusting attention she gets from them, so to each their own, I guess. The White Pig is a tavern, but upstairs there's an inn, and Celaena's actually staying in it. Because of that, Nolan knows that she has money, and he keeps telling Yrene to keep stopping by her table and try to fill her up with ale and as much food and bread as possible so that they can try to squeeze as much gold out of her as possible. Celaena's actually very kind and respectful to Yrene, which she's not used to at all, so she really likes this mysterious girl. Now we're gonna jump to Celaena's POV because not only does she hate the White Pig, but she hates the town that it is in general. She is here because of Arobynn. Things have been quite rocky since she screwed up his slave trade agreement, and now Arobynn is sending her to Yerba. And she's currently there waiting for a ship to come and take her to Yerba, but she's specifically going to the Red Desert. And she's going to train under the Mute Master of the Silent Assassins as punishment. That's actually what the entire next short story is about, so we won't go too deep into that now. But we find out that she is covered with a lot of new cuts and bruises, courtesy of Arobynn, as punishment for freeing the slaves. So that's really frustrating. But Celaena is obviously still very upset. Not only that the whole slave trade thing was even happening, but she's also kind of spiraling, because remember, we talked about this earlier. She was always Arobynn's favorite, and now she's kind of fallen from his graces, and she doesn't know how to act. And she's also a 16-year-old girl, guys, okay? Like, I get she has a lot of responsibilities, and she's a notorious assassin and all, but she's still a 16-year-old girl. So she's very upset, she's very emotional, and she just wants to pick a fight with someone. She's like, I really could just beat someone up. Like, that's gonna make me feel better. So she's quite literally wearing like super expensive jewelry on display in hopes that someone will try to steal it or someone will try to pick a fight with her. Specifically, she's wearing a big red ruby brooch that Arobynn gave her, like smack in the center of like her cape. This is also where Celaena reveals that she technically is supposed to be gone for a while at the Red Desert, and she's wondering, she's like, you know what, if I took a ship somewhere else entirely and just new name, new identity, new life, months would go by before Arobynn would even think to look for me. But there's Sam. She has not seen Sam since they got back from Skull's Bay. She has no idea where he is, what's going on. She doesn't know how Arobynn punished him, and she just can't bear the thought of leaving him, considering he's only in this situation because he went along with her plan. Chapter 2, let's hop back in Yrene's POV, because she can sense a shift in the tension in the White Pig, and all the men are eyeing this mysterious girl. So Yrene wants to warn her, but she's afraid that she could lose her job by making everyone else there angry. But then it occurs to her, like, do I really want to keep this job? Like, it's miserable, and she hates it, frankly. But then she remembers her mother, and her mother would warn the girl without hesitation. Her mother, let's talk about her for a second, because her mother was a healer, and she healed everyone for free in Fenharrow. Now, if you're like, wait, Fenharrow, I've heard of that before. Fenharrow was where Sorsha lived. In my head, I like to imagine that Sorsha and Yrene grew up together and they knew each other and they were best friends. That's just me. But then, of course, as we know, based off what Sorsha told Dorian in The Crown of Midnight, the men of Adarlan came and they completely demolished all of Fenharrow. It technically no longer exists. Anyone who was a healer or was known to be a healer was killed. Now, let me clarify something really quick, because some people think this is a plot hole, but if you know the books really, really well, then it makes sense. We know that Sorsha was a healer in the castle in Crown of Midnight, but you will learn more on later in the series that healers are taught the magic of Silva. Silva is the goddess of healing. There are two aspects of healing. There's a way to heal people using magic, but then there's a way to heal people using just kind of like what our typical nurses and doctors do at a real life hospital. So that is something to consider. We'll get into it a little bit later. Yrene mentioned something about being a healer in Adarlan during the time that magic was supposed to be gone. There's non-magical ways to be a healer. There's also magical ways to be a healer. We'll learn later that the best healers know how to do a little bit of both and mix them both in. So her mother was a magical healer. But then, of course, magic disappeared, and her mother actually was still able to do non-magical healing, and she continued to heal. But when the men of Adarlan came, they didn't really seem to care what the difference was, and they came to kill Yrene and her mother. Yrene's mother basically yelled at her to run. Yrene ran. Her mother died. Yrene is still beating herself over it to this day. So that's kind of like her backstory in a nutshell. We can delve into it a little bit more later, but that's all you need to know for right now. So Yrene's having this very sad emotional flashback to the death of her mother, but she snaps out of it when this slimy, crusty man starts making some unwanted advancements. But then she claims to be married so that he'll leave her alone. And she actually gets away with it because her mother had a ring that she actually kept. and it's like a family heirloom of all the women healers in her family. So she has like this special ring that kind of passes a wedding ring, so the guys are like, okay, dang it. And then she reminds them that the bar is closing in 40 minutes and then goes back to her duties. We're gonna jump to Celaena's POV. The tavern is closing, and she's low-key offended that no one picked a fight with her. So she debates walking the streets at night, just until someone tries something. She's kind of having this moment where she's thinking about when Sam asked her to run away with him, and she's starting to kind of wish that she had. But then she doesn't like that she's thinking about that, so she's like, you know what, I am gonna roam the streets at night, and I am gonna pick a fight. We're going to jump back to Yrene's POV. She's working the closing shift. Technically, Jessa was supposed to stay and help her, but Jessa left with one of the sailors, so Yrene's not expecting her back anytime soon. So she's kind of at that point in the closing shift where she's taking all like the waste and garbage from the day and taking it out into the back alley. As she's like in the back alley, kind of like throwing everything where it needs to go, she's thinking about how 8 years have passed since her mother's death. For the past 6.5 years before she came to the White Pig, she actually lived with a cousin, and then she decided that she wanted to be a healer like her mother. So she planned to go to the southern continents, specifically to a place called Antica, where there is a place called, I always call it the Tor. I know some people say the Torre. To me, Tor just makes more sense. So if you call it the Torre, when I say Tor, that's what I'm talking about. But it's a place where all the best healers in the world go to study healing. So she decided she wanted to go there. So she came to this city, but ran out of money. So she started working at the White Pig, planning to work there for a month to make enough money to get a ship to go to Antica. But then when she did make enough money to take the ship, she realized that she wouldn't have anything when she got there, and she can't just walk into the Tor and say, hey, train me to be the best healer in the world, without anything to offer them. So she decided to stay at the White Pig a little longer. She has not had money, nor will she ever get the money working at the White Pig to go become a healer at the Tor. So once again, she snaps out of this days thinking about all of her life decisions because she hears a noise. And look, I think it's kind of funny because at the very beginning, Celaena makes a comment about how alert this girl seems, and then there's literally so many situations where she gets herself in a crappy situation because she was not being alert. So she hears a noise, and I'll remind you, she's alone in an alley at night. So this is not very good. You don't want to be hearing noises when you're alone in an alley at night and a woman. 4 men who were actually at the tavern decide to come and attack her, and one of them even gets a knife to her throat. And then they say that they want her tips because they saw that she was getting some really good tips. So they ask for them, but then they hear a ruffle and 2 thumps. And the guy holding a knife to her throat turns around and sees Celaena standing there with 2 bodies of the 2 guys she just unalived on the ground. Chapter 3. Yrene actually anticipates a very big fight between Celaena and this burly man who just held a knife to her throat, but Celaena has him down in a second. Like, it's not even a challenge to her. Then the 4th man, because remember there were 4, he is a coward and he just runs away. So Yrene starts to beg for her life, like,
please don't kill me.
And Celena's like, what would be the point of saving your life if I was gonna kill you? Like, I thought you were smart. You seemed really smart, but you're it's not giving smart right now. Celaena then makes a remark about being annoyed that the fight was too easy, because mind you, she's been begging for a fight, and then she finally gets one, and it's like she drops them all in seconds. It's like nothing to her. It's like asking a bodybuilder to drop and give you 2 push-ups. Like, it's nothing. But she is glad that at least the barmaid is safe. Yrene then points out Celena's arm because apparently there's like a bloody cut on it, and then she asks to treat it for her. Celena's technically very angry at the girl because she's like, how could you be so smart and alert but then go into a dark alley at night alone? And Celena's about to turn her down when Yrene says, Silva knows what was on that blade. It is interesting that Yrene mentions Silva because she's considered like one of the old gods now, but she is the goddess of healing. So this kind of tells Celaena a lot about, you know, who this girl is, what she believes. So Celena's like, you know what, if you're a healer or have healer in your blood, then sure, yeah, you can heal me. Chapter 4, Yrene is treating Celaena in her rooms and is surprised on how young Celaena is when she takes off her hood and her mask. She's also very shocked at the amount of cuts and bruises all over her face and the scars covering the rest of her body. She then introduces herself to Celaena as Yrene Towers, but Celaena does not introduce herself. Instead, she just asks how she ended up at the White Pig. Obviously, we already talked about Yrene's story. Yrene just retells her that whole story in different words. So Celaena offers her some advice. Basically says life is not easy no matter where you are, and says that it would be better for Yrene to be miserable in the Southern Isles with no money than to be miserable at the White Pig with no money. So she's got a point. Yrene says she no longer has enough money to even hop on a boat when Celaena suggests that she just steals the money that she needs. After all, Celaena steals stuff all the time. But Yrene says she will never take what isn't hers. She'd rather rot away at the White Pig with a clean conscience. This is very interesting to Celaena, but then decides to ask her, like, okay, so let's say, hypothetically, you found your way into some money, you took a ship to the Tor, you become a healer. You know, you train at the Tor, you become an amazing healer, then what would you do? Yrene says that she would go back to Aderlyn. There are a lot of people who need good healers these days, especially in the continent where healing magic is gone. So she's gonna take all that time to learn all the beauty of healing in both of its magical and non-magical forms. And then she's gonna go to a place where magic is impossible. Just use her knowledge to treat people in non-magical ways. And then on top of that, she could be murdered if the king finds out that she ever trained at the Tor, because if she's been trained in healing magic, she's considered a danger and she can be killed for it. Celaena's actually surprised that she'd come back to a hostile continent, especially one that's so hostile to magic, but Yrene just says it's the right thing to do. Yrene finishes treating her arm and then offers her something for the cuts and bruises on her face, to which Celaena tells her that they serve as reminders to me, so she would not like to have them healed. Then, as a thank you for healing her, Celaena says that she's going to teach her self-defense. So they go down to the alley, and honestly, just insert a little training montage here in your brain, but I'm going to tell you some highlights, some tips per se, that Celaena gives Yrene. 1. Do not let them move you to another location. 2. Fight enough to convince them that you're not worth it. 3. Scream about a fire. More people will gather. 4. If they ever let you go, you run. 5. She teaches her some maneuvers that are going to use her tiny size to her advantage. And then the last and final tip that Celaena more asks her than tells her, to share everything that Celaena taught her that night with any girl who's willing to listen. Then Celaena basically says, like, all right, well, I need to head to bed because I'm leaving for the Red Desert tomorrow, when 5 men approach them in the alley. Chapter 5, Celaena orders Yrene to basically step aside, and Celaena just starts hacking through these men with a sword. So the mercenary who ran away, he basically just came back with more friends. But apparently there was a 6th man that they did not see, and he got behind Yrene and was holding a knife to her throat. Celaena stops fighting and drops her sword to the ground when the man tells her to. But it is in this moment that Yrene realizes that she is not ready to die before she becomes a healer. So she stomps on his foot, and then when he loosens his grip on her, then she does one of the little maneuvers that Celaena taught her. And then Celaena, finishes the job for her, if you pick up what I'm putting down. Unfortunately, though, the knife that he had did leave a pretty deep cut on Yrene's neck. Obviously not enough to threaten her life, but deep enough to leave a scar. And Yrene kind of has this moment where she was like, huh, scars can serve as reminders, and she decides to keep that one as a reminder. But then she turns towards Celaena and she was like,
you knew there was a 6th man. You knew he was coming up behind me. You let him hold a knife to my throat, and you totally could have rescued me.
And then Celaena just goes, I wanted to see if you could put everything I taught you into practice. Hysterical. And then Celaena goes back into the inn and goes back to her room. Chapter 6, Yrene also goes to her rooms to basically clean up for the night, but then she realizes that it's just about time for her to start her opening shift. So she's tired from a long night and she's not going to get any rest, and then she has a really long day ahead of her. So she goes downstairs, she starts to open the store, but then she heads back up to her rooms and she sees something on her bed. It is a leather pouch and a note. The note says, for wherever you need to go and then some. The world needs more healers. And then she opens the leather pouch to see that it is full of gold coins as well as the ruby brooch that Celaena was wearing. So Yrene took the note, she took the leather pouch, and she took what little belongings she had, and she walked right out of the White Pig and never looked back. Now we're going to jump to Celaena's POV. She is on a ship and she is sailing towards the Red Desert, but Celaena couldn't help but feel like the girl lost everything. She still remained to be one of the kindest souls and have such a strong moral compass. There's this moment where, and you'll hear about it more throughout the books, but Celaena refers to like feeling this tug on her heart, and then she decides to tug back, which means she basically decides to give into it. That is in the moment when she decided to leave as much gold as she possibly could. She basically gave Yrene everything she had except for what she needed to get where she needed to go. And then she also threw in the ruby brooch for her as well. So Celaena gave her like a lot, hoping that it would be enough to not only get her on the ship and to her end destination, but to pay for her education at the tour. Welcome to part 2 of The Assassin's Blade, which today we're going to be covering The Assassin in the Desert. Let's just jump right into it with chapter 1. Celaena has made it to the desert and it is miserably hot. Remember, she just left Yrene at the White Pig. Arobynn has sent her to study under the Mute Master at the Silent Assassin's Keep to learn obedience and discipline, but we know this is actually just punishment for messing up his slave trade agreement. Upon her arrival, because she's been traveling for days in the desert, and she gets to this beautiful oasis that is the Silent Assassin's Guild. And there's a lot for her to soak in, but people are also soaking her in. People are sizing her up basically as she's walking through this place, but she walks through until she gets to the Mute Master himself. He looks her up and down and he nods. As you can probably tell by his name, he is mute. He does not speak. It is a choice. It is not a medical condition. I'll just put that out right there. He's taken a quote-unquote oath of silence, or at least that's what the legend says. So Arobynn told Celaena that she has 1 month to study under the Mute Master, and then only within that month, when she gets his letter of approval, can she come back. Oh, and then as punishment to like make everything more complicated for her because he can, Arobynn says that she is not allowed to wear her mask because he's no longer interested in protecting her identity anymore. So anyway, she's in front of this Mute Master and she bows to him and she basically says like, Arobynn speaks so highly of you, I would love to train under you if you will allow me, and he makes some signals. It doesn't sound like they're actually like signaling in an ASL kind of way. It sounds more like a interpretive dance type of signaling, but then again, it's just a book. You don't actually see it, so it's hard to tell. He keeps looking at her, he stays silent for a while, and there's actually this really sad moment where he goes to reach for her face and she like cowers a little bit because Arobynn just like beat the snot out of her face and she has a bunch of cuts and bruises now. So he's like looking at those and you can tell he's like very displeased by them, but he just smiles, snaps his fingers, and then 4 of the assassins standing around her attack. Chapter 2, obviously this attack is a test, and Celaena is happy to oblige because as you remember from The Assassin and the Healer, Celaena has been picking for a fight with people who are actually fairly on her skill set level. She succeeds and she passes the test. It takes a lot of effort, but she's really happy about that. And when she's doing this test, a crowd, I guess, has gathered of all the other silent assassins there. And while Celaena's looking around to see at who all came to watch the show, one girl in particular catches her eye. She has wine red colored hair. Where have we heard that description before? I guess you would only know if you didn't read Assassin's Blade first. I'll draw the connection at a later date, but not yet. She's also heavily clad in some really fancy armor, and the girl steps forward because she's actually summoned by the Mute Master, and basically turns to Celaena and says, yeah, he says you can stay, and we're gonna be roommates, and you start training tomorrow at dawn. The girl introduces herself as Ansel. Ansel takes Celaena to their room to kind of like show her around, but then takes her to a bathing room so she can hydrate and rest before dinner. Something occurs to Celaena at this moment. She's the only girl assassin at the Assassin's Keep under Arobynn. Like, that's never something that she's really had to consider before. We'll get more into this in one of the other short stories in this book, but the only other women that are ever around the Assassin's Keep are actually courtesans, not assassins. So she's realizing like, oh wow, there's like, it's 50-50 here. There's a lot of female assassins, and she's kind of interested in that, but what she's not really interested in is the fact that she has to share a room with a complete stranger who's also trained to kill people for a month. So Celaena asks her what it's like to train with the Mute Master just so she can know what to expect tomorrow morning. But then Ansel shares that she's been training here for 5 years since she was literally 13 years old, and the Mute Master has still not selected her to be trained by him. Also, you're just going to find out right now, Ansel's a bit of an oversharer, so we learn a lot about her, and we learn a lot about the area based off of Ansel's yapping. So she shares that she is Ansel of Briarcliff, which is called the Flatlands, and it was formerly known as the Witch Kingdom. Do you remember in Heir of Fire when Manon goes to get the spider silk from the Stygian spiders and what they said about the Witch Kingdom in the state of it today? This is that kingdom. Anyway, so Ansel's father is the Lord of Briarcliff in the Flatlands, and he sent Ansel to the Silent Assassin's Keep so that she can learn to become useful. But surprisingly, he sent her with his sword that actually has like the pommel of the wolf on it, and they have like wolves on everything. Wolves are very much their thing, so even like her armor, I think there's like wolves on that, and she has little wolf figurines like in the room, like she's very into wolves. So Ansel, I guess, is done talking about herself for a hot second, and she just turns to Celaena and she's like, so how many people have you killed? Because they know she's Celaena Sardothian, they know she's the most notorious assassin in Adarlan, so naturally she's curious, but Celaena refuses to answer. And then Ansel points to all the bruises and cuts on her face and goes, did your master do that to you? Also, in the audiobook, they make Ansel Briarcliff have, like, the thickest Scottish accent. She makes, like, Merida from Brave seem like she has a tame accent. It's kind of ridiculous. Anyways, after yapping halfway across this place, they finally get to the bathing rooms, and Ansel warns her that this is a 100% silence-enforced room. So, apparently, certain rooms throughout the Assassin's Guild, some are, like, required silence, some are required quiet, and then others are, it doesn't really matter. And this is because not only the Mute Master, but a lot of the other assassins here have also taken a vow of silence. And I guess it's so that they can be in like a more meditative state and focus more on their craft. It's not really explained a ton, but it's just a thing. That's all you need to know. So I can imagine it was a really nice bath after a really long and hot journey. But then she heads back to the room that Ansel showed her, which seems actually pretty empty, as if no one else is living there. So I know I said like there's a wolf figurine, but that's pretty much it. Ansel's not one to decorate. I mean, she has a mannequin where she like keeps all of her armor, but that's about it. Also, a bunch of Celaena stuff was unpacked for her. And she's looking at how, like, all of her things were, like, very nicely folded and placed in these drawers. And she catches herself thinking about Sam, because I guess Sam is a pretty, like, put-together kind of guy. And she's like, oh, why am I thinking about Sam? Then Celaena has a flashback to the day that her and Sam got back from Adarlan, and she remembers how angry Arobynn was, and honestly, it was just a horrifying night in general. Apparently, Arobynn called in 3 other assassins. He had them hold down Sam and made Sam watch as Arobynn literally just, like, beat Celaena to a bloody pulp. It was just a very intense moment overall, and she's having very sad flashbacks to that night. Chapter 3, later that evening, Ansel gives Celaena a tour of the Silent Keep, and she goes over which rooms, like, require certain volumes. But then they go to the dining room where Ansel introduces her to a couple other of her buddies, and Celaena basically just gets the tea. Like, these people love to talk, they're a bunch of gossips, and they just have a good time. Then, something interesting happens here, and I actually pulled a quote directly from the book. They're basically joking that Lord Beric is like their local villain, or at least that's how they joke about him. He rules over the city of Xandria, and he thinks he rules over the desert too, like he considers them to be together. Ansel puts it like this. Should I do it in the accent? You might have no clue what I'm saying if I do. To shorten a long and frightfully dull story, Lord Beric has wanted us all dead for years and years. The king of Adarlan set an embargo on the Red Desert after Lord Beric failed to send troops to Yrene to crush some rebellion, and Beric has been dying to get back in the king's good graces ever since. He somehow has got it into his thick skull that killing all of us and sending the head of the Meat Master to Adarlan on a silver platter will do the trick. So that tells us a good bit of stuff. First of all, it tells us more about this Lord Beric guy. Second of all, it tells us that he's not in a good place with the king. It also tells us that the Mute Master is also not in the good place with the king. And the king probably also very much doesn't like the Mute Master. So we're getting a little bit of the politics here. Then they make some jokes about everything that Lord Beric has tried so far has failed miserably. But at the same time, when you're attacking like a fortress full of assassins. Like, you have to be smarter and you have to be craftier. They even say a couple days ago they found that Lord Beric had some of his men trying to dig a tunnel underneath the fortress. Yeah, but no one there takes him seriously. He's just kind of like the fly that's going around them, and they just like swat him away occasionally. Like, he's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. Anyway, so one of the guys in this little friend group, and I think he's the only guy whose name that we get in the friend group. If we get any other names, I did not write them down because they don't really play into the plot. And there's already so many characters in this book that the last thing I want to do right now is throw like 50 new names at you that you're not going to have to remember. Okay, so there's Chaol, and he, first of all, is romantically involved with Ansel. We find this out very quickly. They try to be secretive about it, but it's pretty obvious when you're holding hands underneath the dining table. Like, come on. Anyways, but he reveals that Ansel has actually met Lord Beric. Apparently, the Mute Master sends her as a messenger to represent the Silent Assassins, and he sends her to Xandria every so often, because it's just like a 2 days walk through the desert. Yeah, interesting. So Celaena keeps looking around, just kind of like exploring with her eyes and absorbing as much as she can. And then she sees a rather cute and handsome boy, I guess, down one of the tables or across the dining room. And they make eye contact. And apparently he's a silent one, I guess is what they call them. His name is Ilias, and he's actually the son to the Mute Master. And then Celaena has this moment where like he kind of reminds her of Sam, and she goes, since when do I find Sam attractive? Because that's basically what she's thinking. Ansel noticed that Celaena and Ilias are making eye contact with each other across the dining room. And then she says that he never usually gives girls attention, so maybe he's just into blondes. Sounds like Ansel might be a little bit jealous, but she also like has a boo thing, but that's like a whole nother topic, and we'll get into that later in the short story. Let's just say we're not really shipping Chaol and Ansel. It's the next day. Ansel takes Celaena outside of the fortress, and she says it's a 3-mile run to the next oasis, and then hands her 2 buckets. Celaena's pretty upset because she honestly thought that she was getting trained by the Mute Master this morning, but when he said he would train her, he did not mean personally. She basically has to prove herself first, and apparently one way that she's going to start doing that is by running 3 miles through the desert with 2 buckets to an oasis, filling the buckets with water, and then running all 3 miles back. If you're not a runner, 3 miles sounds like a lot. If you are a runner, 3 miles probably doesn't sound like that much to you, but now consider this. First of all, 2 buckets full of water, that's heavy. Second of all, she's running through a desert, and it's literally referred to as like there's no flat ground ever. It's all like uphill, downhill, uphill, downhill. And then like it's sand. When you're trudging up a dune in the sand, and I only know this because I grew up in Michigan and I've been to the Sleeping Bear Dunes a couple times. When you walk up a sand dune, you feel like you're taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Doing 3 miles both ways, then with full buckets of water, that's insane. Sorry, I was not supposed to talk about that as long as I did, but like that's a lot. So it took Celaena from dawn till dinner time to complete this task because she didn't run majority of the time. She ended up having to walk, and she had to even keep taking breaks. She literally came back with 2 empty buckets because she had to drink them both on her way back because she was so dehydrated. But she makes it back in time for dinner. But things get a little tricky when she sees the Mute Master get up from the dinner table and start to head out, and she decides that it's going to be really smart to, in front of a room of assassins, approach their leader and basically demand that he train her directly. She actually goes up to him, and he is very kind about it and very understanding. Like, he doesn't make her feel judged, even though everyone around her is like, she did not just walk up to him like that. But without speaking, he makes it very clear to her that he doesn't think that she's ready, and he signals to her that she needs to slow down and wait, and then he leaves the dining hall. She debates chasing after him, but then Ilias, the cute boy that she's making eye contact with, who's actually the Meat Master's son, yeah, he comes up to her and he stops her, and he just signals to her that, like, she should not follow him, like, that it wouldn't be good, basically. And they kind of just like stare at each other for a while, and then she realizes that he's like waiting for an introduction. So they have this cute moment where she's like, I'm Celaena, and she puts her hand on his chest and she goes, and you're Ilias, and he just smiles and nods, and it's the cutest thing ever. I know like nothing happens with them, but like I low-key I just love Ilias. I think I want Ilias to have the world's happiest ever after. Why isn't he a bigger character in these books? That's what I want to know. Anywho, so Celaena goes back to her room for the night to rest up because after all, she has to run 6 miles through the sand dunes with 2 buckets full of water again tomorrow morning. Chapter 4, Celaena's desert runs have actually been improving day by day. I think it's been about a week now. She still has not been summoned by the Mute Master. She's able to get the runs done faster now that she's actually able to get back and train with some of the trainers at the Silent Assassins Guild before dinner time. So, big improvement. She also kind of has this moment where she knows most everything that the trainers are teaching her from growing up at an Assassin's Guild herself, but she really wants to get the Mute Master's attention, so she just acts like she's soaking it all in, and then she works really hard to impress the trainers. By her 5th night there, so I was right, just under a week, Lord Beric actually makes an attempt to attack the fortress. It happened to fall on a night when majority of the assassins were away from the fortress on a job, and everyone was talking after the fact that the timing was way too perfect for it to be coincidence, and people are starting to speculate if someone on the inside of the Silent Assassins Guild is feeding Lord Beric information. Celaena is actually really shocked when they're instructed not to kill any of Lord Beric's men. Basically, the Mute Master doesn't want a war. He just kind of wants to, like I said, like he's swatting away the fly and he's trying to let Lord Beric know that they're not going anywhere. So all they can do really is scare the men into retreating. So they somehow like make this wall of fire and it ends up scaring the guys. And so they run back to Xandria for the night. And then Celaena and Ansel can finally go to bed. The next morning, however, there's a knock on the door and it's Chaol. Ansel's being sent as a messenger to Lord Beric following the attack from last night. And Ansel invites Celaena to join her. Celaena decides that it would be a really good way to show the Mute Master that she's willing to be useful and helpful, so she says yes. Chapter 5, Ansel and Celaena are camping out in the desert because, like I said, it is a 2-day trip all the way to Xandria. And Celaena can't sleep, so she decides to ask Ansel how cursed exactly the Flatlands are, considering that's why the witches all had to evacuate. And she basically shares the history. The Crocian witches lived there, and it was like this beautiful, beautiful place. The Iron Teeth witches came in, and these are like really wicked witches, and they're horrible. And then the Crocians put a curse on them that said so long as they are there in these lands, that no crops and no livestock will live or thrive. So once all the Iron Teeth left, because obviously they couldn't live off no livestock and no crops, once they all left and the humans moved in, everything was fine. Like, everything worked again. It's really just a curse on the witches, not necessarily the land itself. So she says it's not really that bad. Then Ansel actually tells her a story of her childhood because Celaena can tell that Ansel is like really hostile towards the witches. And she was like, well, I know witches aren't like the friendliest of creatures, but like, what's your deal with them? So basically, her and her sisters one day were exploring an abandoned like watchtower of sorts, and it was there when the witches were there. So it's like this old abandoned building. And so they're walking around it, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, an Iron Teeth witch was in there, and they freaked out and they screamed, but the witch grabbed their sister Maddie before they were able to get away, and they never saw Maddie again. The Lord of Briarcliff, aka Ansel's dad, did send some men into the watchtower to try to retrieve his daughter Maddie, but they only found her skeleton. So yeah, she died. Because of that, Ansel is very anti-witch. She even says that if she could, she would hunt them all down into extinction. So Ansel feels very strongly about witches. And then Ansel ends up being able to fall asleep, but then Celaena's like so freaked out, and they're literally out in the open at night in the desert. So she's like, oh my word, I can't sleep now. But eventually she does fall asleep because we get to the next day where they finally make it to Xandria, and it's market day. So they have some fun and they explore a bit, but then Ansel has to get down to business and is about to see Lord Beric. But she tells Celaena like, okay, I'll meet you at this fountain in like 2 or 3 hours. Celaena's actually surprised because she was like, what was the point of me coming all this way for you to go alone? Ansel just makes some excuse about Celaena not having clearance to sit in on the meeting because she's sharing some information that she didn't get approval from the Mute Master to hear. So I don't know. It's this like whole thing. So Celaena's like, okay, fine. You know what? I'll just window shop, if you will, and I'll meet you at the fountain in a couple hours. So Celaena's walking around after Ansel heads off. And while she's walking around, she sees a booth with none other than spider silk at it. So she goes to the booth and she sees this man who's selling it, and she's like, what are you doing in Xandria? Because, like, keep in mind, spider silk is extremely, extremely expensive. And he just says that, I'm just going to see if I can get some coins out of this market day, but I'm on my way to the southern continent. Ironically, the same place that Yrene is going. Right? So he looks 40 years old, but he tells her that he's actually 25 years old. He paid for 20 years of his life to get 100 yards of spider silk. Guys, remember? The spider literally told Manon she had recently sold 100 yards of spider silk to a man for 2 decades of his life. This is that man. Okay. Sorry. Things that you wouldn't catch if you read Assassin's Blade first, part 300. But he was actually surprised because he didn't realize that she was going to take the 20 years of his life off the front of it. He thought he was just going to die 20 years earlier than originally planned by fate, I suppose. Apparently, he found a witch one day and he asked her if she could do anything about the 20 years of his life that he lost. And she said that the only way to get out of a bargain with a Stygian spider and to get his 20 years of youth back is if he actually killed the Stygian spider who he made the bargain with. And then he literally turns to Celaena and he's like, well, here's the thing. I know the Silent Assassins Guild is not too far away, and based off your build and the way that you move and the way that you act, I'm assuming you're one of them. That being said, can I hire you to hunt down and kill the Stygian spider? And she's looking at him like, are you kidding me? But she decides that a man who was desperate enough to give up 20 years of his life for all that spider silk and for all the riches that come with it is not really a dependable person. So she just says, you know what? Maybe not right now, but if you ever make your way to Riftold, look for Arobynn Hamel. If you go through my employer, then yeah, I'll do the job for you, which is honestly very smart businesswoman move on her part. I guess as a thank you, he hands her like a 6x6 inch sheet of this spider silk. It's just like this tiny little thing. But he just gives it to her and says, this is a reminder to you that everything has a price. Also remember that she has that. She keeps walking around the market. Eventually the time that her and Ansel agreed to meet up comes around, and so she goes to the fountain. And as they're heading out of Xandria and back to the Silent Assassin's Keep, Ansel decides to sneak past some guards and into Lord Beric's stables. She basically points out these Asterion mares. If you read Throne of Glass, you know where this is going. This is a very expensive and very impressive breed of horses. It's like the most expensive horse you can get. Like only really royalty has these horses. So naturally, they steal them, and they ride them all the way back to the guild. Chapter 6, the girls are having the time of their lives riding these Asterion mares through the desert, and they could have actually made it all the way back to the Silent Assassins Guild in a single day on the horses, but they decide to camp out for one night just for the fun of it, I guess. And they're looking up at the constellations, and Ansel asks Celaena to point them out, because after all, Celaena knows constellations really well. Celaena points them all out, and then she gets to the stag, which is a beloved constellation in Terrasen, and she says as much. When Ansel says, do you ever want to return to Terrasen? This actually really shocks Celaena because she's like, how did she know I'm from Terrasen? And obviously we know why a comment like that might make her jump or a little uneasy. But Ansel makes a joke and says that she assumed that Celaena was from Terrasen because the way she talked about Terrasen was the way her father used to talk about Briarcliff. Obviously, she just spoke about her father in the past tense, so Celaena's a little confused, but before she even has time to ask, Ansel basically admits that she lied, not only to Celaena, but she's actually been lying to the Mute Master. Her father did not send her to the Silent Assassin's Keep. Briarcliff itself, actually, has not existed for the past 5 years. So Lord Locke, who's not extremely relevant, but I guess it's a good name to know, he was inspired, I guess, by the King of Aderlin, and he decided to become a tyrant and started to overtake a bunch of nearby lands, including Lord of Briarcliff, Ansel's dad, but he refused to hand over his land, and Lord Locke killed Ansel's entire family. Somehow she got away. She did take her dad's sword, which is the reason why she has it. She ran nonstop until she ran into an Iron Teeth witch who pointed her towards the Silent Assassin's Keep and literally planted the idea in her head, said train to be an assassin, and then once you're ready, get your land back from Lord Locke. And that's exactly what Ansel's been trying to do for the past 5 years of her life. Chapter 7, once they get back to the fortress, it's very clear off the bat that word about their Asterion mare adventure has gotten back to the Mute Master because they've been summoned by him immediately. And Ansel immediately starts explaining what happened, but trying to totally downplay the situation. But here's the thing, Celaena is afraid that Ansel's gonna get kicked out of the Assassin's Keep because the Mute Master seems really, really upset. And after hearing her whole story and like why she's there to train, Celaena decides to take the full blame, and she said that it was her idea, and the Mute Master actually accepts Celaena taking all the blame. He then assigns them to work stable duty every single morning until Celaena's gone because, I mean, after all, they stole some horses. They might as well have to take care of not only those horses, but all the livestock at the Assassin's Guild. And then the Mute Master signs something to Ansel. She then turns to Celaena and says, "You are to report to him at sunset tomorrow for your first private lesson." Thank goodness. Finally, we've waited long enough. So the next morning, she does her stable duty, and thankfully it's actually replaced her runs in the mornings. So she does stable duty, and then she goes to her midday training. And then after dinner at sunset, she goes to meet the Mute Master on the roof of the fortress. And for the very first lesson, he has a basket in front of her, and he signals for her to open it. But when she goes to reach for it, she hears a hiss. There's a snake in there, basically. But he signals for her to take it off. She pops it off, and she backs up. And it's a black asp, which is a very poisonous snake, I guess. But he signals to her not to kill it and not to harm it, but just to study it and observe it. They do this for days, where she's literally just studying the movements of the snake, learning about how it moves, what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are, and how it compensates for them, and then also how they attack their prey. Chapter 8, we're officially celebrating Midsummer's Eve at the Silent Assassins Guild, and it just also happens to fall on Ansel's birthday, so everyone is ready to have a party. It's a little odd because it is a silent party, but Celaena is surprisingly having a lot of fun, even though they're dancing to literally no music. Also, she's realizing that Ansel's really growing on her, and she's gonna have a really hard time leaving her in a couple weeks when she has to go back to Riftold. This also kind of sends her down this little spiral of like, should I really be having fun tonight? Maybe I should be training with the Mute Master instead so I can get my letter of approval and go back to Riftold. And she's really only in a rush because she has no clue what happened to Sam. Remember, she had that flashback of what happened when they got back from Skull's Bay after freeing the slaves? Well, she has not seen Sam since that night. She was immediately shipped away and told to start heading to the Red Desert. So she has no idea what's happened to Sam, what condition he's in, or frankly, if he's even alive. She also decides in this moment that when she gets back, she's going to find Sam and she's going to tell Arobynn that she's moving out of the Assassin's Keep because she really cannot find it in herself to trust Arobynn the same, like, after what he did. So Celaena dances the night away with Ilias and they have the time of their life. And she decided that, you know what, I'm only here for a short time, so I'm gonna make the absolute most of it. So towards the end of the night, Celaena decides to start heading back to her rooms, and Ilias, like the gentleman that he is, walks her back to her rooms. But right as he's going to say like goodnight, but like without saying goodnight because he's taken an oath of silence, he goes to kiss her, but then she turns her head. It makes me so sad. I was really looking forward to like a small Ilias Celaena moment. Because honestly, like, so she's never been kissed before. So this would have been like, first of all, the cutest first kiss ever with like the sweetest little guy. But unfortunately, she's thinking about Sam, and that's why she panics and backs away, which honestly, fair. Still, we're not really sure why she's thinking about Sam because apparently, supposedly, she hates Sam, right? Or at least that's what she's been telling us, and frankly, been telling herself. She basically just kind of pulls the whole like, well, I'm leaving soon and I'm going to be miles away and I'll never see you again. He actually is like, yeah, you know, you're right. He kind of like shrugs and smiles at her, and they basically decide in their own nonverbal way that they're just going to be friends, and he leaves for the night. The next morning, they're at their stable jobs and they are dead tired from partying the night before, and Celaena decides to take the time to ask Ansel about her relationship with Chaol, expecting like some cute little love story, but Ansel just says that she's using him to get better training because he's like really well tied with the trainers, I guess. And Celaena, she's very judgmental about this, like off the bat. She doesn't even hide it, and Ansel picks a fight with her right off the bat. Not everyone can be trained by the Mute Master, blah, 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 blah. So basically, Ansel is very jealous of Celaena for basically getting here, and within, I think, 2 weeks, she's already being trained by the meat master. Ansel's been waiting for 5 years, and she's still not trained by him. Then Ansel accuses Celaena of being a spoiled brat, which honestly isn't that inaccurate at this point in time in the story. But then Celaena lashes out at Ansel by saying that her life is so sad because she's just spending her entire life to get Briarcliff back, but there's no one even alive that would care if she got Briarcliff back. And honestly, that was a low blow. And rightly so. Ansel does storm out, leaving Celaena to do the rest of the stable job alone without her. Chapter 9, Celaena is training with the Mute Master, but she's distracted because of her fight with Ansel. He actually can see this and he signals for her to sit down. She just says, "I'm scared to go home." The master actually seems really surprised because she is very obviously desperate to go back, but she just admits that she knows nothing will ever be the same again after she freed the slaves, and she doesn't want things to go back to the way that they were, but she's also terrified of what's waiting for her when she does get back. So, like, she doesn't want what she had, but she also doesn't want what she's gonna get, and she's just really scared. She just doesn't know what's next for her. Every path of her future just looks terrifying right now. Once she's done speaking, he gets up and they resume training. So he listened, but then it's time to get back to training, and she actually is able to train better. So, you know, she just got it all off of her chest and now she's good. After training, Celaena goes to sleep for the night, but she's woken up by Ansel. She tells Celaena that she did the stable cleaning job this morning because she wanted to let Celaena sleep in, and this is her kind of leading into an apology, which Celaena returned. She's sorry too, but she also reassures her that, like, she wasn't very wrong about Celaena being spoiled. She's like, "I know I'm spoiled, and I'm sorry that you had to see that." So, like, you know, they're all good. And as a peace offering, Ansel offers Celaena some wine, and so they kind of like cheers, whatever. And Celaena takes a big swig of her wine, and then after a few seconds, she realizes that Ansel has just poisoned her, and it takes half a second before she blacks out. Chapter 10, Celaena wakes up in the middle of the desert. She's not near an oasis, she's not near a fortress, just her Asterion mare. She has 2 daggers, she has a lantern, and she has a note. It was a note from Ansel that said, "I'm sorry it had to end this way. The master said it would be easier to let you go like this rather than shaming you by asking you to leave early. The horse is yours, as is the master's letter of approval, which is in the saddlebag. Go home. I will miss you. Love, Ansel." I think I added the love myself. I don't think she said love Ansel, but she just said Ansel. She signed it. Celaena's actually really confused because she still had 5 days left before her month was up, and she wonders if, like, when she kind of like blabbed to the Mute Master, if he was like offended by that. So she's really sad and hurt about this because she was looking forward to making the most of those last 5 days. So yeah, she's pretty bummed about that. But as she hops on her horse and she's traveling to Xandria, she plans to take a ship to Aderlin, or at least somewhere that can get her on another ship that will take her to Aderlin. But while she's traveling, she hears like this thudding sound, and it is 200 men, Lord Beric's men, who are marching in the direction of the Silent Assassin's fortress. Celaena actually sees this and she goes, "Oh, that's why the Mute Master sent me away. He already knows that they're coming, and that would have delayed me leaving in 5 days, most likely." So she ends up getting to Xandria. She secures passage on a ship that's going to get her closer to Riftold. But the entire time that she's waiting for the ship to go, she can't help thinking about, like, the 200 men on their way to the Assassin's Keep. Also, like, she pretty quickly jumped to the conclusion that the Mute Master knew that the Lord Beric was sending 200 men, but what if he didn't? Because wouldn't it make sense that he would want Aderlin's best assassin fighting by his side? Also, she was under the impression that Ansel's negotiations that she made like a week ago went pretty well. So she's a little shocked. What could have possibly gone so wrong in negotiations for this to happen? And then it occurs to her. The Mute Master must have had a reason for refusing to train Ansel for 5 years. She decided to open this note of approval that the Mute Master had supposedly written for her, and it was an empty sheet of paper. She was not dismissed by the Mute Master. Ansel lied to her and tried to get rid of her. This is also the moment where Celaena realizes that Ansel has not been negotiating, but she's actually been a spy for Lord Beric in the Assassin's Keep. Remember earlier people were saying there has to be a spy within the Assassin's Keep? It's Ansel. So Celaena hops back on her Asterion mare and she runs back to the Silent Keep as fast as humanly possible. Chapter 11, Celaena makes it to the fortress on the mare and the battle has already begun. She enters the fortress immediately because the doors are already wide open and there are so many bodies on the floor in the fortress. So she's trying to keep her eyes up. Her main goal is finding the mute master. So she runs into some guards. She's able to fight them off without a problem though, because like we've said before, she's very skilled. She runs into Chaol and Ilias's bodies. Chaol is gone, but upon further inspection, she realizes that Ilias is gravely injured, but he's still alive. He actually points in a direction and she assumes that's where his father is, aka the Mute Master. So she follows where he pointed. When she runs into the room, she sees Ansel standing over the Mute Master, about to quite literally chop his head off with her father's sword. And the Mute Master, obviously, he has drunk the same wine that Celaena drank. He's not just like sitting here letting this happen. Like, he has been knocked out. He is currently unconscious. And Celaena sees that Ansel like has her sword and she's about to behead this man. And Celaena just throws a dagger that hits Ansel in her wrist. Ow. But she basically is able to distract Ansel and keep her from killing the Mute Master. They get in this super intense brawl where Lord Ansel says that Lord Beric promised to give her 100 men to take back Briarcliff from Lord Locke, so long as she brought him the head of the Mute Master so that he can give it to the King of Adarlan. It's also at this point where Ansel begs Celaena to join her, and Celaena actually hesitates, but she realizes she has to refuse because if she rules anywhere, she's gonna be ruling in Terrasen. Obviously, she doesn't say this outright. She says it in some weird coded language. Anyway, so they get back into very intense combat again once Celaena refuses to join her. And then Celaena pins down Ansel, and in this position, she can make the killing blow. And she's about to, when Ansel starts begging for her life. This is when Celaena says, "You have 5 minutes to pack up your things and leave the fortress, because in 20 minutes, I'm going up to the battlements to fire an arrow at you. And you'd better hope that you're out of range by then, because if not, this arrow is going straight through your neck." And Ansel runs. Chapter 12, not 20 minutes, but 21 minutes later, Celaena's on top of the battlements and Ansel can be seen running off in the distance on her Asterion mare. Celaena shoots an arrow and watches as it falls into the sand just inches behind Ansel. So Ansel gets away. This is also one of those moments where I cannot possibly believe that someone would recommend reading Assassin's Blade first, because if you read this first, it just seems like Ansel was her friend and she didn't want to kill her friend. No, if you've read these books and you know who Celaena truly is in her backstory, the significance of this is that her and Ansel are the same person. Her entire family was killed and her kingdom was taken by a tyrant. And she also made some really horrible decisions. She knows that what Ansel did was wrong and it was horrible and it cost multiple lives. I think 20 of the silent assassins were killed in this attack. 20 people's lives were lost because she was a traitor and she was a spy. So it's not just Celaena cutting her some slack because she's her friend. It is another ruler whose family and country was literally taken away from them, and they've had to live the lives of nobodies who are stuck being assassins. They have the same exact story. That is why it's so significant. I'm moving on from that. Celaena, exhausted obviously from running on a horse both ways and all the emotional turmoil of everything that she just experienced, she heads to bed for the night, and the next morning Celaena is summoned to see the Mute Master. And would you believe he speaks to her? He actually makes a joke and he's like, "I know the legend says that I made an oath of silence." He goes, "I just decided to stop speaking." I think that's kind of funny. But he did tell her that he knew all about Ansel for the past 5 years, and that is why he did not train her. He was actually really hoping that one day she would trust him. And he did say something along the lines of the day that she came forward and told him the truth, he would consider actually training her because he saw so much potential in her. But knowing what she wanted to use her skills for, he didn't know that he could necessarily support that. So he was very sad when he found out that she was a spy, but he also wasn't horribly surprised. Anyways, then he hands a letter to Celaena, and it is a raving letter of approval to give to Arobynn Hamel. And then also, the part that makes me want to cry is he then points to 3 trunks full of treasure and says, "This is to pay off your debt to Arobynn. She shouldn't be owned. She is a human being. She should be free, and her skills should be used because she wants to use them, not because someone else is holding debt over her head to use them. So she thanks him, obviously, for everything, and she takes the trunks of gold and she goes back to Riftold. Let's talk about the entire plot of Assassin's Blade Part 3, The Assassin and the Underworld. Chapter 1, Celaena is back at the Assassin's Keep with the letter of approval from the Mute Master for Arobynn. But as she enters into Arobynn's office, Wesley's there. Wesley's actually a bodyguard. He's not an assassin. So Celaena goes in there all smug because she knows Arobynn expected her to fail. So she's really looking forward to seeing his face when she hands him this raving letter of approval. And then on top of that, she cannot wait to see his face when she also shows him the 3 trunks of treasure that's going to buy her her freedom. So she walks in, she hands him the letter, but Arobynn immediately goes into a power play. It's almost like he knew this was coming, and he pretends like he's busy with something else. He doesn't even acknowledge her. After reading, like, I think 3 documents, he finally looks at her letter of approval and then apologizes for what he did to her. He also says he wished that he could take it back, how he wished he had never done any of it, and how he hopes that she can forgive him. And because Arobynn and Celaena have a really toxic relationship, also she's 16 years old, and this is a full-grown adult man who's totally taking advantage of her, but she starts to actually believe him. She's hesitant. She's not, like, fully trusting again, but she's starting to wonder, like, maybe he's really changed. Girl, please. So he starts showering her with gifts immediately, and she decides not to show him the 3 treasure chests and leave yet. Then Arobynn asks her to do her first mission since getting back. Now, let me tell you, I took a long time studying and analyzing what the whole political situation was and why she needed to kill this person, but in all reality, I don't think it's that necessary. All you need to know is that Adarlan is a kingdom, Melisande is another kingdom. The royalty at Melisande yielded to the King of Adarlan. And so the King of Adarlan lets them kind of like run their kingdom, but he's still very much like has a say in pretty much everything they do. Well, Melisande royalty wants to build a road in between Melisande and Adarlan, and this would be a very big deal, really good for trade, really good for the economy, if you will. So everyone's really excited about this, but apparently Donable is the person that Celaena has to kill. And who Donable is someone who is trying to take advantage of this road to start doing slave trading and basically using this road to his advantage. Supposedly, a ton of people, including the royals of Melisande, are coming to Adarlan and they're going to party and they're going to have a great time. But Donable is here. All we know is that he's meeting with his secret partner 6 days from now in whatever place he's staying at, to exchange documents. And supposedly it is an extensive list of all the people in Adarlan opposed to the slave trade. We don't need to go into specifics, but basically Celaena's assignment is to not only unalive Donable, but also Donable's partner. And then she needs to retrieve the documents. Actually, she doesn't need to kill Donable's partner, but it's like a bonus if she does. But she has to retrieve the documents and give them back to the client. The client is Donable's ex-wife. So that's some juicy details right there. That's actually, would you believe it or not, that's like quite the summary. This all seems pretty simple because we know exactly where Donable's going to be and what day the deal's taking place. So Celaena's like, great, like this is nothing. This is going to be so easy. But then to make things even sweeter, Arobynn says, and you know what? I'm not going to take a percentage. Everything you make from this deal is going to be all yours. Man's really laying it on thick if you ask me. So she pretends like she's going to consider it just to kind of also have like a power play moment, I guess, but she's pretty set on taking this job. So she tells Arobynn she's going to think about it, and she decides to go back to her rooms. On her way there, she runs into Sam. We have a sweet and tender reunion that lasts about like a couple seconds where they pretend like they didn't miss each other and that they weren't worried sick about each other for the past like 2 months. But of course it quickly turns into bickering because they are both being cagey about what they went through while the other person was gone. They are both like,
What was going on with you for the past 2 months?
And the other person's like,
I'm not telling you what went on with you.
and the other person's like,
I'm not telling you until you tell me.
so it's all very childish, but you have to remember that these are teenagers. I easily get annoyed when reading Assassin's Blade because Sam and Celaena can be really immature, but then I remember that they're literally like 16 and 17, and it just makes sense. So while Celaena and Sam are bickering, a girl sticks her head outside of Sam's room. This is Lysandra. So Lysandra's a lot like Celaena in the way that she was rescued and then also kind of like forced into an occupational lifestyle, except for Lysandra wasn't forced to become an assassin. She was forced to become a courtesan because she is supposedly one of the most beautiful human beings in all of Adarlan. Like, she's stunning, she's gorgeous, I mean, beautiful. But here's the thing, Celaena hates Lysandra's guts. Like, listen, it's almost hysterical how much these girls hate each other. So it doesn't help that Lysandra is like all over Sam and is flirting with Sam this, Sam that, Sam, and it's driving Celaena insane. And apparently Lysandra is coming of age soon, so she's gonna have her big bidding party, which is honestly really disgusting and I hate it. But Arobynn is throwing a party to celebrate because apparently she's the most anticipated courtesan to be going onto the market. Sam has kind of been assigned to be her bodyguard until that day comes. So they're just, getting real cozy with each other, and Celaena hates this, basically. Chapter 2, Celaena wakes up to, surprise, surprise, even more gifts from Arobynn, and so she tells Arobynn that she will take the job. Now, it is 5 days before Donable's going to be meeting with his business partner, and also all the people from Melisande are coming into Adarlan today, so things are about to get crazy. We're actually gonna skip that day and we're gonna go to the next day. So we are now 4 days out from Donable meeting with his business partner, and Celaena is getting fitted for a killer new assassin fit. And based off its description, it sounds like a really cool outfit. Arobynn is at her fitting, of course, just kind of making sure that everything is up to par. It's also a very expensive suit we're finding, and he's paying for it. And then he says that Sam's going to be getting a new fit as well, but Arobynn's forcing Sam to buy his. So this is another situation where we see that Celaena is definitely Arobynn's favorite. Arobynn then leaves Celaena to kind of finish her fitting without him because he has other business to attend to, I suppose. And Celaena takes this opportunity to ask the designer who's currently doing the fitting right now if he could incorporate spider silk into the new assassin gear. And she says she wants it right over the heart of the suit. And the designer is honestly just thrilled that he gets to put his hands on spider silk and actually use it. So he says, absolutely, consider it done. After Celaena finishes up her fitting, she runs into Sam in the hallway. He confronts her. He's super ticked off that she's been accepting all of these gifts from Arobynn after everything that Arobynn put them through, specifically her. Then Celaena's like, if you knew what I went through, you wouldn't criticize me for taking gifts. She's just making the most of a crappy situation in her mind. She makes also some backhanded comment about, at least he got to stay at the guild. He then says that he wishes he'd been miles away from the guild, and that when Arobynn asked for his forgiveness and asked what his price would be, instead of saying all these fancy little gifts, Sam made Arobynn Hamel take an oath that he would never put a hand on Celaena again to hurt her. Now, this actually makes Celaena feel really, really bad because she's like, oh, I guess me taking all these nice gifts is kind of shallow, because Sam, instead of asking for his debt to be free or asking for his next suit to be free or all these other things, instead the price of his forgiveness was her protection. Big sad. So then Celaena just starts missing how it was easy to hate him, but now it is not so easy to hate him, and that just makes her hate him more. So if that isn't complex, I don't know what is. Now, later that night, Arobynn is taking Celaena to the theater, which, from the first couple books, our girl loves all things fine art, especially music and the pianoforte. But as excited as she is, her excitement gets a little less excited when she finds out that they're going to be going with Lysandra and Sam as well. Chapter 3, Celaena's at the theater living her best life. Also, take note that this is the exact same theater that the King of Adarlan has shut down when they mourn the people of Eelway. This is that same exact theater. So, Celaena is up in Arobynn's box because he's a fancy man and he has his own box at the theater. And as she's sitting up in the box, she's looking down at the crowd and she sees Donable. He has security, and nothing that worries her too much, but she can tell that they're attentive and well-trained, so it's nothing she hasn't dealt with before, but she'll have to be careful. Then she accidentally makes eye contact with Sam, and so she just says the first thing that comes to her mind, which is, "You look handsome." To which Sam responds, "You look beautiful, though I bet you already know that." Yes, she does. Then there's this really sweet moment where Celaena's like, yeah, the dancing was good, but she's just captivated by the music. It really moves her. She really connects with it. And then after the show, when they all get back to the Assassin's Keep, Celaena sneaks into this room, I guess, that's not very used. It's just kind of off to the side. And she starts to like try to recreate the music from her head, like from what she remembered. And obviously it's just a piano and not like a full piece orchestra. So she's like doing her best. She starts to get frustrated because she can't remember the melody and she can't get it just right. So she goes to storm out of the room and go back to her bedroom to just head to bed for the night when she runs into Sam in the hallway. He had been listening to her play, but she's been caught in a vulnerable moment and she's used to being like some hardcore killer assassin chick, so she doesn't like that he caught her in a vulnerable moment, and she just starts like chewing him out. In an interesting shift of conversation, she then tells him about her mission with Donable and says, you know what, I could use some help. Do you want to maybe help me with this mission? I'll let you have a cut. And he agrees. Chapter 4, it's officially 3 days until Donable meets his business partner, and Sam and Celaena are gonna scope out the place that Donable's staying. There are guards everywhere, and they're a little more well-trained than she thought based off the ones that she saw at the theater. And they start talking game plans. They basically have 2 things they absolutely need to figure out in the next 3 days. The first one is when they're meeting, because all they know is the day. So they want to know the time more specifically so they can get really strategic about their planning. But the other one that they don't necessarily need to know, but would be really helpful to know, is who in the world is Donable's business partner. Like, that is still very much a mystery. As they're talking about all this, they notice one of the bodyguards leaves the house and starts walking down the street. And this is abnormal, so they decide to follow him. They follow him all the way to a tavern, and they just hang out and they wait for him, and he finishes drinking, and then he goes back to the place. And they're like, that was odd, but okay. Now, while they're waiting for this bodyguard to finish drinking in the tavern to see if maybe he's meeting with anyone, they're talking about a couple things. First of all, they're talking about how it's been nonstop pouring rain and how it's most likely going to continue pouring rain for a very long time. Then on top of that, the streets have been having regular festivities in them. Remember I told you Melisandre's here, so we're just going to party it up like every single day. And the party don't stop just because of the rain, okay? They're having the time of their lives. But because of that, the King of Adarlan is having the sewage all dammed up so that it can fill with rainwater, and then eventually when the rain starts to calm down, they're going to break the dam, and so all of the water is just going to flush out the sewage system into like some body of water, I guess. So anyways, all that happens. They don't really learn much except for maybe like what the rotations are of the security, and they get more information on what the security is going to look like the day of the deal. So they head back to the Assassin's Keep, and once Celaena gets back to her room, she realizes she has some more gifts from Arobynn, so she's going through all of them, but then she gets to one gift, and it's not actually from Arobynn, it's from Sam. It is piano sheet music of the music that was playing at the theater. See, as a musical person, that's the most romantic thing ever. I don't care what you say. Later that night, Sam and Celaena are actually going to some sort of like ball for the upper class, specifically to celebrate the moon. I don't know. It's not really important, but they're going to some sort of festivity tonight, and Donable is going to be at the festivities as well. So they're hoping that they'll find out who his partner is based on who he gravitates towards. They get there, Celaena thanks Sam for the music, and they just continue to dance together while keeping an eye on Donable. Unfortunately, he doesn't actually gravitate towards anyone. He's just obsessed with the courtesans. But Selena's like, oh, he likes young women? I have an idea. And let's just say Sam does not like this idea. Chapter 5, Celaena's solution is to go up to Donable, acting like some dumb blonde who's like super timid and has like a big crush on him, and she flatters him a ton, and she's like, oh, my uncle's a merchant and he speaks so highly of you and blah blah blah. It's literally so disgusting and weird because he's like obsessed with her in half a second, and when she can tell that he's like very clearly interested in her attention, she does the whole, oh, we would love to have you join us at the theater. And she specifically says at the theater 3 nights from now, which is the night he's supposed to meet with his partner. and he reveals that he has business to tend to at 7:30, so she and her uncle can pick him up in their carriage at 8:30 that night. So she's like, okay, great. Like, she now knows that they're meeting at 7:30. So she thanks him for being so willing to stoop so low, to go to the theater with her and her uncle, and how it means the world to them. And as she's walking away, she makes eye contact with the ex-wife. Mind you, the ex-wife is the one who's paying her to take out her husband, okay? Or her ex-husband. And Celaena thinks that she has a look of regret on her face. And Celaena's like, well, it's too late for that now. I need to get my bag. And your ex-husband's also trying to deal in slaves. I have no qualms or guilt about unaliving this man. She makes her way back to Sam, and she tells him everything that she found out. As much as he didn't like her plan, he's very proud of her for figuring it out, and then they start to dance the night away. But then Celaena sees a very handsome man walking into the party, and he makes his way over to Celaena and asks her to dance. But Sam gets jealous and basically tells this man to back off. But then the handsome, mysterious man, he has a buddy next to him who steps in and is like, bah, basically tries to scare off Sam. And it's this really awkward, weird, and tense moment. Mysterious, handsome man and the super tense best friend of the mysterious man end up walking away because Sam is clearly very upset, and they decide that it's not worth their time. Guys, it was Dorian and Chaol. It was Dorian and Chaol. And the crazy thing is that if you read Assassin's Blade first, it would have just seemed like a really random moment, but it's actually really funny when you know who it is. And that's Dorian and Chaol. Sorry, that just cracks me up. Chapter 6, it is the next morning, and it's officially 2 days till Donovan meets with his partner. That morning, Celaena does some training at the Assassin's Keep, but of course she learned all this cool new stuff from the Silent Assassins Guild, so she's showing off all of her new skills. And then at the very end of it, as her and Sam are kind of walking back to their rooms after training, they start talking about their mission. Celaena wants to head back to the place to scope one more time, but Sam has to be on guard duty for Lysandra's bidding rehearsal. So she said that she's going to try to sneak in alone and get her eyes on the documents, and also find out which room his office it is in by like peeking through all the windows. So later that night, Celaena's at Donable's place, and it's significantly less guarded, so she figured that wherever Donable is, he just brought more of security with him. So she's going from rooftop to rooftop, and eventually she does look through a window, and she not only sees what's very clearly an office, but she sees a bunch of documents and papers laying out on the desk, and she's like, could these be the documents that I need to retrieve? Because that would just make her life way easier. So she starts like hopping from rooftop to rooftop, and then she gets onto the rooftop of Donable's place, and she scales down the side of the house till she gets to the window, pries it open with a knife, and literally the second she steps her foot on the floor, she's attacked. There were 2 guards hiding in the office waiting for her to come through the window, but she's able to take them down when 3 more come into the room, and then she gets the good old chloroform treatment and passes out. Celaena wakes up later, and she is in the sewer. One of Donable's bodyguards is there, and he tells her that they have been aware of her and her buddy Sam spying on the place, and she may be good, but she's not that good. So literally everything they've done, every time they've been like sneaking around, like the security has been fully aware that they've been scoping out the place for the past 3 days. And he just has 2 questions for her, which is, why did you choose to go into that room specifically? And where is your friend? She makes some snarky comment, and then he goes, you know what, scratch those other 2 questions. I just want to know who hired you. And then she's like, oh, what, are you going to try to torture the answers out of me? And he says, no, I don't need answers. They would just be nice. He's like, I have no qualms just like ending your life right here and now. So she starts to question like, oh, then what am I doing down here? Turns out they've been damming up the sewers to collect all the rainwater so that they can flush out the entire sewage system. Yeah, the dams are being broken this evening. Actually, they're being broken in like the next minute or 2. So the bodyguards have tied her ankles in her hands and put her in a chair in the sewage system, and they just get up and leave. Within 2 minutes of them leaving, the sewage water is already up to her waist. Literally everything about this chapter just grosses me out. Thankfully, her new outfit had a bunch of hidden knives in there, so she's able to take them out and she's able to get rid of her bindings. The only issue is when she goes to the grate that's in the ground of the street above her, they've put something on top of it so she can't open it. So she decides to swim through Aderlin's waist down to the next closest grate. The only issue is that it is completely rusted shut. She starts screaming for help, but it's already started pouring rain outside, so clearly no one's going to be able to hear her. She tries to use one of her knives to open the grate, but it's not budging. So she kind of goes through this moment where she accepts that she's going to die. And then she says the most bonkers thing. The water would have taken her one way or another. Guys, do not read Assassin's Blade first. I don't like... There are so many one-liners and even paragraphs in this book that are insane. But if you read Assassin's Blade first, they mean nothing to you. Like, it just sounds like she's being melodramatic. But in all reality, she was supposed to die in the water when she was like 10 years old. So crazy. Anyway, so the water's up to her neck at this point. She hears Sam yelling her name. He runs up to the grate. He's trying to, with his own knives, pull the grate from the ground, but he also can't get it. And so her last words to Sam are, "Take my body home to Terrasen." Chapter 8, plot twist. Those weren't actually her last words because she's not dead. Apparently, some woman saw Sam trying to open the grate in the streets and she brought out a crowbar, so thankfully she was there and had a crowbar for whatever reason. I'm not going to question it. Celaena's alive. I'm happy about it. And whatever fantastical version of CPR they teach the assassins at the Assassin's Keep, that's what he does, and he resuscitates Celaena back to life. He then carries her back to the Assassin's Keep, where she takes about a bajillion baths before she's so tired that she needs to crawl into bed. And honestly, I don't know if I would ever feel clean after being submerged in an entire town's sewage system. I'm not going to think about that any harder than I need to. But Sam comes to visit her while she's laying in bed resting, and he asks for what happened the 2 months she was gone. And she finally tells him. I don't know why she was being so cagey about it. So she basically tells him the entire plot of the assassin and the healer and the assassin in the desert. Then she lets him know that as part of their mission, not only are they going to retrieve those documents, and they're going to kill Donable, and they're going to kill Donable's partner, but she's also going to be killing the bodyguard who left her in the sewage to drown. Chapter 9, Celaena, with her newfound courage, marches into Arobynn's office, gives him her 3 treasure chests, and just tells him that she's no longer in his debt. She still wants to work with him, but she doesn't want to be owned by him. Like, she wants to be more of an employee, but she wants to be her own person. Surprisingly, he's very calm about this, and he's like, "Oh, well, of course I'm sad because you're my best assassin, but I totally understand. Best of luck on your mission." Very surprising, not at all what we expect from Arobynn in the slightest. So she leaves that meeting with Arobynn, she meets up with Sam, they're doing some final planning for their mission. Also, there's way more guards than usual because Celaena snuck in, and now they felt the need to up security. And while they're talking these last second plans, Sam congratulates her on being a free woman and paying off her debt to Arobynn, and then tells her that he also plans to be free. He is going to Alleyway in 2 weeks to start basically a franchise of the Assassin's Guild. Like, Arobynn's still gonna own it, but Sam's gonna run it in his place. Celaena does not handle this news well in the slightest. He tells Sam that he can't leave, but Sam tells her that the reason why he's doing it is because every single day since she left, he has been fighting the urge to kill Arobynn. And he needs to leave before he does anything rash. And when she's like, "Get over it," like, "I'm over it," and he's like, "No, you don't understand. I can't get over it because I love you." And then he says, "I'm not going to ask you to choose between me and Arobynn because I wouldn't be able to bear the heartbreak of you choosing him." But then Celaena tells him that she chooses Sam. Chapter 10, Celaena and Sam kiss. So sweet, so cute. Celaena's first kiss with the first love of her life. And it's Sam. Tender, sweet, loving Sam. But tomorrow's the big day, so they have to stay focused. So they go to bed to get ready for the next day. Flash forward to 2:30, the day of the deal. Sam and Celaena have 5 hours before the meeting takes place, and they are outside scoping the area. They decided that Celaena is going to wait towards the servants' corridor back door, and she's going to wait until a maid comes to throw the trash out, and then she's going to sneak in behind her and then hide in the wine cellar until 7. That's when Sam is going to start a fire as a distraction, and hopefully that's going to thin out security while Donable is meeting with his partner. So all of this goes according to plan, but 15 minutes before 7, Celaena actually gets a good opening to go up to the office. So she's like, you know what? I'm going to get in there early and try to get my eyes on these documents. So she goes up there, she's looking all around for them, and she can't find the documents anywhere. They're not just like sitting out on the desk like they were the day before. But as she's snooping around the room, she basically finds a loose floorboard. She pulls it up, she pulls the documents out, and she starts to read through them. And she's a little confused because it's a lot of maps and charts and names in what looks like the entire plan for the slave trade in Melisande. So she's looking through these documents, basically trying to make sense of them, when she hears a noise down the hall. Donable and his partner are coming into the office. Chapter 11, she basically stuffs the documents into her suit and then hides in a closet in the office. Her plan is to take them both out while they're in there to talk about the documents, because the guard is only going to be on the outside the door, and she's going to try to take them out before the guard notices anything's wrong. So they both come into the office, and she doesn't recognize the partner at all. And after some small talk, Donable's like, all right, let's get down to business. And he goes to pull up the loose floorboard to get the documents. And the second he realizes they're not there, Celaena hops out of the closet. She unalives Donable. She hears Sam's distraction take place. It was supposed to be a fire, but it's something more akin to a bomb. The partner, however, the second she jumped out of the closet, he booked it. And he is very, very fast. So Celaena runs out of the place and she starts chasing this partner down the street. As she's running out there, she runs into the bodyguard who left her in the sewage system, and she goes to unalive him as well. And with his last breaths, he says, Donable loved this country. You don't know anything. And then he dies. Celaena continues to run down the street to chase after the partner, and sure enough, one of the corners he turns around ends up leading him to a dead end. So she's basically got him cornered. But right as she goes to get him, he, with a match, catches all the documents he was holding on fire, because I guess he brought some to the partner meeting as well. He catches them on fire, and then he drinks a vial, which makes him unalive himself. And as Celaena's running up to try to grab and retrieve the documents, or what's left of them, she sees that it isn't maps and charts of Melisande, but of Aderlin. And she's starting to wonder if maybe there was way more to this business partner deal than Arobynn led her to believe. In a very interesting move on Celaena's part, she decides to let these documents burn, and she goes back to find Sam. When she gets back to Donable's place, it is completely burnt to ashes. Sam's distraction just caught the entire house on fire, and Celaena, unfortunately, I guess the documents at some point fell out of her suit, or she left them in the closet, I'm not quite sure, but the documents also went up in flames. She asked Sam if he's okay, and he said that someone shot an arrow at his heart, but the only reason he survived is because there was a block of spider silk sewn into his suit right over his heart. Guys, do you remember when she asked the designer to sew it in? She wasn't asking to sew it into her own suit. She was asking to have it sewn into Sam's. That's so sweet. I love that. Chapter 12, Celaena is back at the Assassin's Keep, and she debriefs Arobynn on the mission. But he is ticked off and basically tells her that she is not getting paid a cent, most likely, because she had 2 jobs, and potentially a third. Retrieve the documents, kill Donable, kill the partner. All the documents were burnt to ash. Donable's body was left in the fire, and there's no evidence of a body. The only thing she succeeded was the death of the other partner, and technically he took his own life. She didn't even take it. And then on top of that, that was just going to be a bonus. That wasn't actually a part of her mission. And then this is where things get really crazy, because Celaena asks him, she kind of confronts him. She's like, what actually is going on? Like, something in this isn't adding up. And then Arobynn reveals that there was never a trade agreement. The real meetings have been going on in the Glass Castle with the King of Aderlin. Donable and his partner were fighting to stop the slave trade agreement from going through between Melisande and the King of Aderlin. Arobynn knew all of this, but as punishment for freeing all 200 slaves at Skulls Bay, he made her kill the only 2 people who were trying to keep the slave trade from happening in her home kingdom. If that isn't a different type of twisted, I don't know what is. Celaena, out of anger, starts to leave, but right before she does, she turns around and she gets in the last word and tells him that her Asterion mare, the one that she got when she was in the Red Desert, she sold it, and all the earnings are going straight to Arobynn's account, and it will cover Sam's debt entirely. Her and Sam will be leaving, and they will no longer be staying at the Assassin's Keep. And then, because Arobynn can't let anyone have the last word, he then shares that he used all 3 of her treasure chests full of treasure to win Lysandra's bidding, knowing that that would be, in Celaena's opinion, the worst possible thing he could have spent her money on. And then she leaves, and she gets Sam, and she lets him know that his debts are paid, and they move out of the Assassin's Keep into their apartment, which is Celaena's apartment from Heir of Fire. Welcome to the entire plot of Assassin's Blade, Part 4. We're going to be covering the very last short story and finishing Assassin's Blade today. Instead of Chapter 1, we're going to be starting with Chapter After. And Celaena is on her way to Endovier, and as you know, this is a slave camp where Dorian and Chaol find her in Chapter 1 of Throne of Glass. But if you're like, wait, I thought that's how this book ends, you're correct. We're going to jump to 11 days earlier in Chapter 1. Also, when I reread this for like the 4th time, it never occurred to me that all this stuff happens in 11 days, and that just makes it all crazier to me. So Celaena is sitting in the rafters of the theater, basically hiding and just enjoying the music and all of that. But she's mostly hiding, one, from Arobynn, Hommel, and Lysandra, but second of all, she now has no money. Her and Sam are on their own, and they're struggling, so she can't exactly afford box seats like she used to. It has been a month since they left the Assassin's Keep, so there's been a 1-month break since the last short story in this one. And although our girl likes nice things and she likes having money, she doesn't regret it one bit. And I think that's what's really important. After the show, Celaena heads back to the apartment where she sees a note from Sam. He is not there. He says he'll be back later that night and not to stay up. But Celaena is ticked off because she knows exactly where she is, and she decides she will not be waiting up for him, but she is going to go show up. And she's going to show up at the vaults. Now, the vaults, how to describe the vaults? It's like an underground tavern, and it's also where cage fighting happens, and a lot of other illegal things that people are willing to pay a lot for. So the people who own the vaults are like swimming in gold coin, if you will, but it's quite literally where the worst of the worst go. And Sam has been going there, and in order to make them money, he's been entering into the cage fighting tournaments. Because he's like a trained assassin, he's doing really, really well, but you never know who you're going into the rink against. And so that's Celaena's whole thing. We learn that they have been fighting about this for a long, long time. Celaena does not want Sam fighting in the pits because people die in the pits all the time. So she gets there. He's fighting in the pits, and he's a little worse for wear, if you will, but he's still winning. And she looks at him and she says, "You get out of this pit right now, or I'm gonna hop in there and be the next person you fight." And Sam gets out because although he was always Arobynn's second best assassin, Celaena was the first. And although we never see them actually fight it out, they make it very, very clear that both Sam and Celaena know that if they were to fight, Celaena would win in seconds. So he does decide to hop out of the pit, and they go to the back alley outside of the vaults, and that's where the real fighting begins, because these people are going at each other. They've been fighting about this for the past month, basically. Sam thinks because they're not getting any jobs, this is the best way to get money using their skill sets, because they don't exactly have a resume of, like, other skills. They've been trained to kill, and that's about it. But Celaena just keeps saying, like, no, we'll figure something out. We'll get a good job. And he just says, we won't get a job so long as we're in Riftold, because Arobynn, they still kind of work for him, but more as contractors than actual in-house employees. Does that make sense? Intentionally not sending them anything. It's just Arobynn a way of flexing his power because he likes to do that, like, a lot. Sam is basically like, I think we should move away, and Celaena's like, absolutely not. She won't exactly articulate why, and that is a big part of this short story. It's not just a mystery to us, it's also a mystery to Celaena. She just knows that she doesn't want to leave Riftold, even though she's not exactly sure why. She can't really articulate it. He's begging and begging and begging her, and this is not the first time they've had this conversation either. This is something Sam has wanted for a while, and Celaena just says, you know what, I'll consider it, but there's no way that we can just leave because we're technically still in Arobynn's employ. So she kind of stalls him by saying, let me talk to Arobynn and see if I can get like our contracts undone, and then we can look into it. And then in what might seem like a really small detail, it's a big detail in this short story. She chews him out because he smells like lavender, and she has this really fancy lavender soap. And because they don't have a lot of money now, she's holding her nicer things closer to her chest. And she's just like, don't use my fancy lavender soap. Like, use your own soap. Use the cheap stuff. Chapter 2. It's the next day. Sam and Celaena are headed to the Assassin's Keep to ask Arobynn if they can leave his employ when they're met by Wesley. Remember, this is Arobynn's bodyguard. I need a picture for Wesley because he comes up a couple times here and there throughout the series. He's not like a big character by any means. So there's not like any fan art out there of him. But I feel like when I think of Wesley, I think of like a Peeta Mellark. Like, he's big, brawny, and strong, but he's like got a really sweet heart, I guess. So we're just gonna have Peeta Mellark up here, and this is who I want you to picture for Wesley, okay? I'm not thinking about any of his actual physical attributes as they're described. Honestly, I don't remember what they are, but all you need to know is who Wesley is at his core. It's this guy, okay? So they walk into Arobynn's office where Celaena tells them that they're officially leaving the guild and they're leaving Riftold. And Arobynn pulls another annoying power move where he grants them permission to move away, but he refuses to grant them permission to leave the guild. This way he can still kind of block them from getting jobs and they don't become competitors, which makes sense, but he also sucks for doing it. Then he decides that if they really want to leave the guild, it would cost them, and he gives them a price. Arobynn is way too well connected, and apparently he knows the people at the banks because he lists the exact price that both Celaena and Sam have in their bank accounts combined. Celaena sees this for what it is and realizes that Arobynn doesn't expect them to take the deal, so she says, yeah, we'll do it, and then they walk out. Sam is really upset. He's like, you should not have accepted that. We do not have that money. Like, money where? Do you have more money I don't know of? But Celaena just tells him that there was no point in negotiating. That's what Arobynn wanted, and he would have loved to put them in their place and kept the price the same, so negotiating wouldn't have made a difference. We just need one more job, and hopefully it will be enough to help us leave Riftold. So Sam conveniently does go out that night, and he finds a job. He found a client who wants to avoid using Arobynn's guild because Arobynn is actually closely connected with the people he wants to put the hit on. So the hits are Yrene, Jane, and Rorick Farron. I know there's not going to be fan art of these two guys out there, so I'm just going to like drop two pictures. But Sam and Celaena know that these people are extremely dangerous and ruthless. Honestly, Jane and Farron make Arobynn look harmless, and that's saying a lot. So the price on their heads naturally is huge, and it is huge enough to comfortably pay Arobynn, move, and get totally settled in wherever they go. So it's quite the price. But it's also going to be probably one of the hardest missions they have ever done in their lives. Chapter 3, the next morning, Celaena tells Sam that she thinks they should take the job. So remember from earlier in this book, Celaena never takes a job right away. She lets it kind of like sit with her gut, if you will. So she agrees, let's take the job. They decide they'll take out Farron first and then Jane, because Farron is actually Jane's second. So Jane is the biggest crime lord in Riftold, and Farron is this expert in torture. He's also known as one of the most twisted men in the Empire. So they spend the day scouting out and planning their hit. Because Sam found the deal, he decides they're going to do it his way. And if you know anything about our girl Celaena, she definitely fights that really, really hard. She doesn't like it, but she decides, you know what? Yes, you found this mission. you lead on it, and I will just follow suit however you need me to. Then Sam says he wants to take out Farron himself, and then she's just gonna help him take out Jane. Celaena hates this, but she does agree because, you know, his deal, his plan, but also Sam explains, like, because he is an expert in torture, he would not be able to live with himself if Celaena was caught by him, and she, like, understands this to an extent. She doesn't like it, but she understands. Celaena also finds herself, like, while they're planning for this mission, she does, like, miss kind of all the perks that came with being Arobynn's top assassin at the Assassin's Guild, because like we said, she likes fine things, she likes nice things, but she decides that for Sam, it was all worth it. And that's really sweet. So after a day of scouting, Sam, I don't remember what Sam's doing, but Sam goes to do something else. And Celaena starts to head back to the apartment. Sure enough, the door is like ajar. And she walks in, and who else is sitting in the living room of her apartment than Arobynn Hommel. Chapter 4, she is not surprised at all that Arobynn found out where she lived. He is way too resourceful for that. For goodness sakes, he found out to the exact copper how much was in her bank account. So she makes him some tea, and it's not so much out of politeness as to she needs a second to, like, gather herself because she's very flustered by this unexpected visit. And then he says, "Why would you be stupid enough to take on Jane and Farron?" True. Then has the audacity to ask if she even trusts Sam. Then has the audacity to ask if she even trusts Sam, because after all, she hasn't told him who she really is. Step back. We just learned something really big here. Guys, this is your last warning. If you have not read the first 3 books in the series, leave now. Are you gone? Last warning. Goodbye. Arobynn knows that Celaena is Aelin Galathynius. This is not something we have known in the past. Like, we know he rescued her, he knew she was from Tirsen, and obviously you could have speculated that, but this is the first time in the books that it is confirmed that Arobynn knows that she is Aelin Galathynius. So now you know why he kind of treated her more like a prized possession than an actual human being. I mean, he's a trashy person, and that's part of why he did it, but also why she is, like, his treasure is because of how powerful she is, not just as an assassin, but as a political figure. And somehow he knows that she hasn't told Sam yet, and she hasn't. Celaena decides that it's none of Arobynn's business who she shares her secret with and when, and just as she's walking to her room and dismisses him to leave her apartment, Arobynn, listen, this threw me the first time I read it, but Arobynn then confesses his love for Celaena. Thankfully now Celaena can finally see through Arobynn's manipulations, because in the past she did kind of let him, like, smooth talk her out of all of his bad decisions, but this time she's like, no, you're just a bad person. And I don't feel honored by the fact that you did all these horrible things out of love for me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have actually done horrible things. So that's huge. Big growth on our girl Celaena's part, so love that for her. And then Arobynn finally does leave. Celaena, you know, she's thinking about this love confession because if you think about it, she's grown up since she was 8 years old, so for half of her life with this man, she has always wondered, like, does he see me like a daughter? Does he see me like a sister? Or does he see me like a potential lover? And now she knows for a fact which one it is. And she even admits, like, if she had known that sooner, it probably would have changed things, but now that she actually sees him for what he is, she'll never go back. So, love that for her. Anyways, this is a short chapter, but I feel like it holds so much significance. And mind you, all of that is going to be really important for Queen of Shadows. So, like, remember her and Arobynn's dynamic. Because I'll also remind you that at the end of Heir of Fire, she plans to go back to try to get her amulet from Arobynn. So they're gonna have quite the reunion after what we talk about today. Celaena makes the slightly less mature decision to not tell Sam that Arobynn was there, but she also thinks it's for the best because she doesn't want Sam to be distracted before making probably the biggest hit of his life as an assassin, And Arobynn visiting there would just really aggravate Sam because Sam is very sensitive where Arobynn's concerned, which we just learned that he has every right to now. Sam does get home and he can tell that she's upset about something, but she just is like, oh, just nervous about the mission, haha. And he shares that in the darkest and scariest moments in his life, to kind of bolster up his own courage, he says, "My name is Sam Cortland, and I will not be afraid." Remember that. Anyways, chapter 5. Today, Sam and Celaena are stalking Farron. Turns out, you remember Jane, so he's the crime lord. He's like the number one of the pair. He owns the vaults. That really horrible place where all the horrible things happen? Yeah. Jane owns that. So they go down to the vaults and they pretend to be day drinkers to try to overhear any of Farron's conversations because Farron is at the vaults. And it turns out that there's a man who was fighting in the pits often and he lost many a games and he has a lot of debts to pay to the vaults for losing his matches. And when he can't pay them, Farron has his men drag them to a room under the vaults. So the vaults, I believe, are already underground. And so they're like deep, deep underground. And minutes later, you can hear his screams vibrating through the floor. No, thank you. So they decide to leave because there's no point in waiting for him to finish torturing this man because if anything about Farron's reputation rings true, it is that he's going to be down there for a long, long time. And then Sam asks the question, and it's the big moral complexity of the Throne of Glass books, which is, how is it possible? And is it even possible that Sam and Celaena are better people than people like Farron? And I think this is a valid point because Celaena is always the hero of our story and she's our main girl and she's the one we're rooting for, but she's quite literally an assassin. She kills people for a living. And Celaena just says, no, they may do the same things, but we never enjoyed it or got a thrill from it. She does kind of allude to the fact that neither her nor Sam chose this life. It was kind of forced on them too. Whereas people like Jane and Farron, although we don't know the life circumstances that got them to where they are today, she recognizes that they started their own thing. And Farron loves torturing people. And there's a difference between being pure evil and loving it and being forced into an evil lifestyle, I guess is the point that she's trying to make. So the next morning, Celaena is sharpening their weapons because it is officially time. Sam is going to take out Farron today, which is the tortury guy. And their plan is to use 3 arrows. He's going to shoot the footman, then the carriage driver, and then Farron. So he is going to be on a rooftop and he is going to wait until Farron's carriage drives by. He also has planned multiple escape routes just in case a couple things go wrong. And he asks her to start packing so that she stays busy, and then informs her that he got them passage to leave for the southern continent in 5 days. Now, Celaena is not very happy about this. If anything, she's very ticked off about this because she agreed to leave Riftold, which is like their village, if you will. She did not agree to leave the entire continent. I have a couple theories as to why she's upset. I think it's because she's going to be further and further away from Terrasen, especially if they go to the southern continent. I believe it's the polar opposite end of the map. But Sam calls her out and he says, "Is this because you don't want to leave Arobynn?" She quickly replies, "Absolutely not." But then he's like, "Okay, if this isn't about Arobynn, why didn't you tell me he was in our apartment yesterday?" Arobynn is trash, and apparently he sought out Sam yesterday in the market and walked up to ask him how he was doing and then decided to casually mention his conversation with Celaena, and he was like, "Oh, she didn't tell you?" Chapter 6. Celaena is sitting around and just trying to stay busy because she can't find it in herself to pack, and it's killing her to wait. Sam is out making his hit on Farron. And all she can do, because guys, they didn't have phones. It's not like he can text her being like, it's done, I'm on my way home. Like, she just kind of has to sit around and hope that everything goes right. So a couple hours later, she decides to grab her cloak and go out looking for him. There's no signs of a disturbance or rumors of a death on the streets. She's walking the alley. She's going to all of the main points where he said that he was likely going to do it, and she just can't find Sam anywhere. She even walks past Farron's home. The guards are just, standing duty as if it's any other day. And then she decides to head back home. After all, maybe Farron stayed home, and maybe Sam never got the opportunity to make the hit in the first place. Chapter 7, Sam is not at the apartment once Celaena gets back, so she's getting a little bit more nervous. But she decides to keep waiting for him. She's sitting on the couch, and eventually she wakes up. She accidentally had fallen asleep because she was so exhausted from getting all worked up, and she spends the next morning looking everywhere for him but cannot find him. Once noon rolls around, she decides to head back to the apartment again, and she finds the door ajar. So she's like super excited. Sam came back when she wasn't there, but when she runs in, it's Arobynn Chaol, and he just tells her, I'm sorry. Chapter 8, Arobynn tells Celaena that Sam is dead. Farron and his man thought Sam still worked for Arobynn, so they dumped his body at the Assassin's Keep. And all she can say is that she wants to see the body, but Arobynn basically just says, well, you have to remember he was making a hit on Farron. Farron is one of the most notorious, evil, and twisted expert torturers in Riftold. And trust me when I tell you, you do not want to see what's left of his body. She goes all the way to the Assassin's Keep anyways, and she's not letting down, so Arobynn does decide to let her see the body. And I'm not going to get into the details of what happened, first of all, because I don't want to get demonetized, but second of all, just because it's just really hard to say, and I don't want to ruin your day, but it's really heartbreaking. There's also a lot of fan art out there that I think, makes it less gory looking, but I also am afraid to put that up here and get in trouble for gore. Let's just say it's not good. And she's crying over his body, and the part that I don't know why this is what broke me, but she is sobbing by his body, trying to accept the fact that this is real and this has happened, when she smells his cheap soap, and all she can think about is how she was too selfish to let him use her lavender soap. Chapter 9, Celaena wakes up the next day at the Assassin's Keep. Apparently she had kind of cried until she passed out, and so Arobynn had brought her up to her old room, and she decides to stay in there and just kind of play everything over in her head, like what could have possibly gone wrong with this mission. And then she hears some voices in the hall, and she goes to step outside and see who's out there and what they're talking about, when she realizes that she's been locked in. She decides anyways to listen to what's being said in the hallway, and she overhears some of the other assassins from the guild saying that it was an insult for them to drop Sam's body at the keep that way, and that they're organizing an attack on Jane and Farron tonight. You would think that Celaena would be happy about this, but she just lost her first love and the love of her life. So she decides that she is going to be the one to kill both Jane and Farron. So she climbs out the window, and she makes her way to Jane and Farron's house. What could possibly go wrong? Halfway there, she runs into Wesley. Remember, this is our Peeta Mellark-esque bodyguard to Arobynn. He stops her, and he says, Celaena, use your head and think. He begs her to think this through, but, she knocks him out and continues on her journey to Farron. But even as she does have this moment where she stops to think, and she was like, Wesley? Why would Wesley not want me to do this? Like, it kind of occurs to her, but she also has like this kind of tunnel vision, blinding female rage going on right now, and she's a one-track mind, for sure. So she climbs onto the rooftops, and she decides she's going to be running, jumping, and crashing through the second floor window into Farron's home and just go sicko mode on all of them. Chapter 10, Celaena does just that. She dives right through the window into a room full of people in a meeting, two of which are Jane and Farron. And she starts dropping bodies like they're hot. She is hacking her way through this room, desperately trying to get to Jane and Farron. The craziest part in all this is that she actually gets to Jane and kills Jane. The biggest crime lord in Riftold is dead. Celaena killed him. That's bonkers, okay? Like, that is already going to have a very large cascading effect. But she's on her way to Farron. But before she can, Farron and everyone else in the room puts masks on. And the room fills with this very, like, weird, sweet-smelling gas. And then she realizes Sam's body had smelt like this gas. So this is whatever they used on Sam. So Celaena is laying paralyzed on the ground because apparently that's what this gas does. So she's still conscious, but she's paralyzed and she cannot move. And she hears Farron say that he wants her alive. And he's surprised she fell for the trap. Celaena was betrayed, and everyone there knew that she was coming, and they were all conveniently waiting in that room for her. Farron also makes this disgusting and angering comment about how those in love and seeking revenge are very predictable. This is also where he reveals that he struck a bargain with someone who betrayed her, and the deal was that he kills Sam, Celaena tries to kill him and Jane. Everyone in the room but Jane knows that she's coming. They let Jane die. Farron takes Jane's place as the #1 crime lord in all of Riftold, and he will now own the vaults. And all he had to do was hand over Celaena to the king for murdering Jane. Because apparently, not surprisingly at all, our king of Adarlan, the horrible, horrible man that he is good friends with Jane. So if that doesn't explain the corruption of this kingdom and why everything is so horrible in Riftold, the king is like best friends with the crime lord. So that's a great combination. This is also where Celaena was like, I should have listened to my gut feeling when I realized something was off when Wesley was trying to keep me from doing this. Farron, however, is upset because as part of the deal, he was not allowed to actually hurt Celaena, but he says that certain injuries could be explained by his guards in her fighting when she first entered the room, so he does beat her up a little bit until she gets knocked unconscious. Chapter 11, hours have passed, and she has actually regained some movement in like her fingers and toes, so the paralysis gas is wearing off. And at this point, she realizes that no one in the Assassin's Guild is coming for her. This is also where she realizes that she was most likely betrayed by someone in the Assassin's Guild. She also realizes at this point that she has changed locations. She is now in the royal dungeons in the castle. So the king has her, and she knows she's not getting out of this one. And then she realizes she failed Sam and she failed herself. So now all there is left to do is accept her fate. Chapter 12. It's a few days later, and it is officially time for her royal trial. And it's actually going to be private because the king doesn't want her age to get out to the people of Adarlan. Because the king is thrilled that she's caught, but he doesn't want everyone to know that he's been struggling to catch a teenage girl for the last couple years. So they're in this private royal trial, and the king is listing off all of his grievances with her and all the things that she's going to be sentenced for. Sorry, my legal jargon isn't that great. I went to school for journalism. But he's especially excited because she's just accepting everything. Like, she's not pleading innocent to anything. She's not necessarily pleading guilty, but they tell her that if she doesn't plead innocent, she is pleading guilty, and she just stays silent throughout the whole trial. So she is, like, pleading guilty to everything. And then he asks her for her last request. And she says, whatever you do, just make it quick. She's ready. She's ready. She's done with life. The king smiles. And instead of delivering her sentence of execution, which is what everyone was expecting, she is shocked when the king says that her sentence is to serve the rest of her life in Endovier, which obviously we knew because of the first book. But Celaena is shocked by this, and to her this is worse than death. Like, she would rather be executed right here and now. Now, this is the insane part. They load her up in a wagon to be transported to Endovier immediately, when we jump to none other than Arobynn Hommel's POV. He is standing on the rooftops near the castle with none other than Farron, the new crime lord of Riftold. They're watching Celaena be pulled in a wagon away from the castle to Endovier, and they're both shocked that she wasn't executed. Farron then asks if Arobynn will be going forward with his rescue mission to get Celaena, but Arobynn says, no, I've changed my mind. They have been working together. Arobynn put a fake hit on Jane and Farron, knowing that Sam and Celaena were desperate for money, and it was all a setup. Farron and Arobynn were teaming up to get Jane killed and get Celaena caught and get Sam dead. And for his reasoning, Arobynn says, I don't like sharing my belongings. I hate this man. I hate this man with a passion. He legitimately feels entitled to Celaena. Like he owns her. He loves the idea of owning a fae princess who has the potential to flip the world on its head. He loves that. He's obsessed with it. He is obsessed with her to the point where he could not handle the fact that there was someone else in her life that she had started to care for other than him. I hate it. Chapter after, again, Celaena has been riding in this wagon for 2 weeks on their way to Endovier, but one day in the path, there is a very large white stag. Now, the white stag is like the stag of Terrasen. It's a very big deal, and it symbolizes the Lord of the North. This is also a big deal because the king had ordered them all hunted into extinction after he took over Terrasen. So the fact that this thing exists is wild. And Celaena yells at the stag to run because the king's men have been ordered to, if they ever see a white stag, to kill it on sight. I can only imagine this moment and what it looked like. But this is a sign to Celaena. Also, guys, if you read Assassin's Blade first, you wouldn't catch this, but the white stag is showing up to her because she is the rightful heir to Terrasen. And it's in this moment that she sees the white stag that she remembers that she has something bigger worth living for. Kills me. It kills me. I love it. It's amazing, but it also kills me. And then the beginning, which is the final chapter that happens right as Celaena is arriving at Endovier, and she's terrified. But that stag reawoke something in her, and she's determined to survive. She is determined to not let the king's sentence break her. And all she can say is, my name is Celaena Sardathian, and I will not be afraid. Thank you for watching the entire plot, Assassin's Blade Part 4. We're officially done with Assassin's Blade, and we are going to be jumping into my personal favorite in the series, Queen of Shadows. But of course, while you wait, you should enjoy some of my other Sarah J Maas related videos, and you should subscribe and stick around and join the party.